Chapter 1592. Do it again. Jiang Tian yelled. Once, twice, 9 times. In the end, 9 soul-devouring thorns went in, and he injected his mind energy 9 times. Every time the thorns landed in the mind of the chaotic divine body, the bright starlight and chaotic chi dimmed a bit. In the end, only skin and skin were left, as if the body was made of flesh and blood. And at this time, after Jiang Tian's original body was absorbed into his avatar and fused into one, it was also undergoing a qualitative transformation. It quickly surpassed the human sacred body and the 9 heaven deity body, and went straight to the supreme chaotic divine body. If the news were to spread, the entire universe would be shocked. Even the cultivators in the central galaxy would be dumbfounded. It should be known that even in the peerless sex and immortal holy lands of the central galaxy, it was rare to find a divine body. In short, there was only one person who could condense a divine body in 100,000 years. In the end, Jiang Tian's limbs, meridians, organs, bones and every cell were filled with chaotic chi. His original body was no different from the chaotic divine body. At the same time, Jiang Tian's divine soul was also injected into the chaotic divine body. It could move independently, but it also obeyed Jiang Tian's orders. Jiang Tian could order it around as if it was his own arm. Besides, the chaotic chi between his original body and his clone could be used at will. Phew! Jiang Tian heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, he had finally completely refined the chaotic divine body. He had only sealed it before. Then he used the thorns formed by his mind energy to refine the entire body into his own body. However, Jiang Tian also paid a heavy price. If a cultivator could open their heavenly eyes, they would be able to see that only a small part of Jiang Tian's mind was left. Every wisp of black mist and the rolling black goo was Jiang Tian's mind energy, immortal will and mind energy. The next step is to form the 9-orifice chaotic nascent soul. Jiang Tian's eyes shone brightly as a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. Kacha. Following Jiang Tian's urging, pieces of the golden core on the inner wall of the spirit embryo peeled off like a collapsing galaxy. The spirit embryo that originally occupied the 9 galaxies had completely collapsed. It was as if a majestic and ancient shrine had decayed and declined. Only a thin layer was left. Within it, endless primordial energy and laws of nature were stirring and boiling, as if they were about to burst the spirit embryo. However, Jiang Tian was condensing his nascent soul outside his body, so he wasn't affected much. His face was calm as he bent his fingers and pointed repeatedly. A loud bang was heard. The lid of the great sun furnace flew up, and waves of vast and surging true essence poured into the spirit embryo like a huge river, nourishing and strengthening it, stabilizing it. The spirit embryo became thick and heavy once again. Its magic power was incomparably strong and dense as it boiled. It was like another huge smelting furnace that trembled nonstop and compressed with all its might. It wanted to fuse the 9 types of golden cores into one. This process lasted for about 10 days, and this was under the effect of the time array disk's time acceleration. However, in the end, although the spirit embryo shrunk to the size of a chicken egg and the 9 golden cores shattered, it still couldn't condense into a true chaotic 9-orifice nascent soul. Sigh. It's harder to form a nascent soul than to reach the heavens. It's much harder than reaching the soul formation realm. Looks like I have no choice but to gamble with my life. Jiang Tian sighed softly. His gaze was deep, and a hint of determination flashed across his face. I'll absorb the spirit embryo into my body and use my body and soul as a furnace to refine all spells. Only then will I have a chance of survival. In fact, Jiang Tian had previously taken the 30-foot divine disc out of his body to form his nascent soul to preserve his body and soul. This way, even if he failed to form his nascent soul, and the spirit embryo shattered, he would still have at least 30% of his cultivation. However, it seemed that it was difficult to have both. Swallow. Jiang Tian opened his mouth and directly swallowed the spirit embryo into his stomach. At this moment, the aura on Jiang Tian's body became chaotic. The light around his body flickered, and the chaotic aura expanded and contracted for a while. Shockingly, it was the incomparably vast and violent laws of true essence that rushed out of the walls of the spirit embryo and interfered with the corporeal body. It filled Jiang Tian's organs, limbs and bones, swimming and charging crazily within. If Jiang Tian hadn't condensed the chaotic divine body at the first step, his body would have been as hard as a quasi-divine treasure. If he were like an extremely hard copper pea, he wouldn't have been able to withstand it at all. Even so, his face became very ugly. Sometimes it was pale, sometimes it was like a piece of golden paper, and there were even traces of blood seeping out of his 7 orifices. Who? Then, amidst the shocked exclamations of Ying Shan and Yi Gongming, Jiang Tian took a deep breath and stood up with difficulty. Suddenly, he jumped up and shot into the sky like a dragon, entering the great sun furnace. Condense! Jiang Tian's expression didn't change as he calmly let out a low shout. Within the great sun furnace, all the spirit qi that was churning like clouds was like a tornado, pouring into Jiang Tian's body. Even the great sun furnace had disappeared completely. The next moment, in the spirit embryo, the 9 golden core fragments and aura suddenly contracted. Jiang Tian's boundless primal chaos true essence, Law's divine soul, and the blood of his corporeal body abruptly shrunk and gathered in the spirit embryo. At this moment, the entire world was silent, cold and dry, as if time had frozen. Only Jiang Tian was left in the sky above the ring-shaped mountain, sitting cross-legged like a stone statue that had existed since time immemorial. At this moment, the astral wind stopped, the vital qi froze, dust fell to the ground, and even time seemed to have frozen. In the void, only Jiang Tian could be seen sitting there cross-legged. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, an unknown amount of time passed. Jiang Tian was like a clay statue. There wasn't a trace of spirit qi around him. All the chaotic qi had been retracted into his body, and there wasn't even a trace of dermic power. Even the luster on his skin was dim, as if he had died for thousands of years. This state lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound. Jiang Tian's body suddenly exploded. Countless faint golden god's bones, mercury-like marrow, and organs covered in colorful light all burst open. God's blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the sky red and exploding all over the ring-shaped mountain. Even his head wasn't left behind. What was left was a ball of black gelatinous substance wrapped around a bean-shaped placenta that was violently swelling, and an incomparably faint spirit shadow. In that ball of black gelatinous substance, one could vaguely see Jiang Tian's spirit rising and falling, trying its best to harmonize the vast and surging vital qi in the spirit embryo. My lord, don't take any more risks. Where there's life, there's hope. My lord, perhaps you are still lacking some cultivation materials. This scene frightened Yi Gongming and Ying Shan. Many cultivators were crying as they knelt on the ground and begged. Condense. Jiang Tian's faint spirit spoke. At the same time, an obscure voice came from the Black Soul Devourer. It was like the whisper of a god-devil from the deep devil realm. So. Countless blood, bones, and organ fragments came from all directions as if they were pulled over by an invisible palm. It was like a scene being replayed, condensing at the Black Soul Devourer and restoring Jiang Tian's true body. But it had just condensed for less than 2 days. Pung. The fleshy body exploded once again. That black gelatinous substance swelled even more than before. That spirit embryo became much bigger, and was now the size of a basketball. The intense light within was fluctuating with all its might. It felt like there were countless strands of energy roaming about. It felt like the entire placenta and the soul devourer's divine consciousness would burst apart at any moment. But at this moment, Jiang Tian's spirit remained indifferent. He only opened his mouth and shouted. Many blood and bones condensed once again, transforming into Jiang Tian's fleshy body. And so, this happened 9 times in a row. Jiang Tian's fleshy body exploded 9 times, each time more thoroughly than the last. In the end, not even a small piece of bone could be found. All of them had turned into fragments. But Jiang Tian was still struggling to condense, even though it became more difficult as it went on. Even Jiang Tian's Black Soul Devourer's divine consciousness seemed a bit thinner. The condensed god body was like a diamond with flaws. It wasn't as dazzling, perfect, and strong as it used to be. However, Jiang Tian had forcibly used a supreme divine ability to shatter and be reborn 9 times. Every time he was reborn, Even though the energy of his divine body seemed dim, endless azure divine thunderbolts struck and imprinted many Dharma laws in it, making the energy of his fleshy body seem more ancient and majestic. It carried a hint of ancient and everlasting Tao runes. Those Dharma laws didn't just enter his body. They also entered his true essence and divine soul, making that golden light ball shrink. Boom! When he was reborn for the 9th time, the golden light ball in Jiang Tian's body finally shrank to the size of a goose egg again. That golden light ball emitted a gentle light, like a placenta. Boundless profound creation energy surged within it, and an intense miracle that was unknown to the world was occurring within it. Dong! An incomparably indistinct voice came from the spirit embryo, sounding like the heartbeat of a baby. At this moment, Jiang Tian's divine soul was formed. Chapter 1593. Then, boom boom boom. The second sound, the third, the fourth. Each sound was more powerful than the last. In the end, it sounded like a god was beating a drum, shaking the world. All of the living beings within a radius of 100 kilometers felt their bodies go limp. Boom. When the 9th sound was heard, all the craters in a 100-mile radius were crushed at the same time. Even the nascent soul cultivators were bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose and mouth. All of them were terrified and they tried to run away. My lord is a nascent soul cultivator. Go back to the base, Yigongming said while retreating. Those waves were too powerful. They would be affected if they stayed outside, and might even be severely injured. In a blink, many of the cultivators went back to the base and activated countless arrays. However, the buildings in the base were still trembling violently under the powerful waves. They were like small boats in the middle of a huge wave. Those were ancient relics that could withstand the attack of a soul formation cultivator. That was enough to show how powerful Jiang Tian's nascent soul was. Even though they were hiding in the bunker, Yi Gongming and Yingshan were able to see something through the Dharma artifacts they left outside. Many giant golden light screens were displayed, and they were showing the scenes of Jiang Tian's breakthrough. Everyone stood below and stared intently, their faces filled with excitement. Most of them were above the nascent soul level, and had experienced the nascent soul level. But they had never seen such a nascent soul level. What's that? All of a sudden, one of the cultivators widened his eyes in shock. To everyone's horror, they saw a long river of black water appear behind Jiang Tian. The river was as black as ink and extremely heavy. It cracked the dimension below and a giant gully appeared on the ground. Not only that, the river behind Jiang Tian extended endlessly. It was unknown whether it was tens of thousands of miles long, or even hundreds of thousands of miles long. Billowing black water turned into a towering river that stretched across the sky. It seemed to be able to cross the entire planet Jiyuan. And yet, that was only the first level. Then, a towering divine tree appeared. Countless primordial energy of the world turned into vigorous vitality and fell from the tree. Each of them could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator. Between the branches and leaves, there were glittering vitality like stars floating up and down, as if it could create a world. After that, a rock flapped its wings with the intention of flying. Its wings were like clouds that covered the sky while numerous black hole worlds coiled around it, causing space to be obliterated, and it seemed as if a single wing was capable of destroying 3,000 worlds and traversing the heavens. Then the lightning mantis, the ice god, the Gungjin divine emperor, and the winged dragon appeared one after another, shocking the world. Heavenly minister! But how can there be such a vast number of celestial phenomena in this world? And there are so many of them. There are 9 of them. Not even the gods of the ancient celestial court could achieve that. Yi Gongming was shocked. He had lived a long life and had seen many things. However, at this moment, he was completely stunned. Golden core perfected cultivators had Dharma forms. The Dharma forms of nascent soul heavenly lords were usually called heavenly forms because of their powerful Dharma power. However, even the ancient sages could not achieve 9 heavenly forms during the nascent soul realm. They could be invincible just by cultivating 2 or 3 laws. These heavenly forms are way too frightening. Yingshan trembled from head to toe, feeling as though he was facing the ancient gods. The pressure was way too immense. Against that unparalleled divine might, everyone was shocked and wanted nothing more than to prostrate on the ground and kowtow 9 times. On the other hand, Yi Gongming revealed a look of delight as he said with a piercing gaze. Humph, these 9 heavenly forms are more than enough to deal with the ruins emperor. However, to Jiang Tian, all of this was nothing more than a matter of course. The most dangerous phase was already over. The 9 heavenly forms were merely remnants of the 9 divine bodies and the appearance of the laws. When all 9 heavenly forms appeared, the spirit embryo that was the size of a goose egg within Jiang Tian's body finally lost its brilliance and color. Wang. A thumb-sized nascent soul sat in a lotus position in the middle of the spirit embryo. He was very small and had delicate features. His appearance was exactly the same as Jiang Tian's. He looked extremely tiny and inconspicuous. That nascent soul was docile, and its body was filled with chaos. It was also emitting a faint divine glow and had an eternal, unmoving and perfect Tao rune. It was as if it would remain unmoved even if the sun and moon collapsed or the stars were destroyed, just like a Tao venerable of the 9 heavens. What was even more peculiar was that mortals had 7 orifices while that baby had 9. There was an additional eye on its forehead and on its belly button. At the same time, the divine tree, the Kuan-peng, the winged dragon and the other 9 heavenly forms appeared behind the nascent soul one after another, turning into 9-colored divine light that surrounded the nascent soul like a giant wheel. The divine infant abruptly opened its eyes. Boom! All the Taos in the world seemed to rumble. It was filled with endless energy, as if it was nurtured by the heavenly Tao. It was several times stronger and more perfect than a sacred-grade soul formation cultivator, as if it was nurtured by the essence of the sun and moon. Ah! A tired, leisurely and somewhat satisfied sigh sounded in the ring-shaped mountain. Jiang Tian slowly opened his eyes with a complicated look. After reincarnating for almost 10 years, going through thousands of disasters and fighting in different worlds, the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant had finally been completed. At the moment, a year had passed according to the time on Earth, and a month had passed according to the time in the ruins of deity. The entire ruins of deity had been stirred up, and a storm was about to come. In the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range in the Dinghai County of Xianan Province, primitive monsters were everywhere, and all kinds of monsters were running around. This place was extremely dangerous. However, there was a magnificent building surrounded by an array hidden in the mountain. It was called the Yuntian Palace. It was one of the strongholds of Yin Zhongzi. The leader of the guards there, Yun Fei, was one of Yin Zhongzi's descendants. He was already a nascent soul cultivator, and was patrolling the clouds with a group of bandits. Few people knew about this place. Every time the bandits went in and out, they would rely on teleportation arrays. Besides, the surrounding environment was dangerous, so normally no cultivators from the ruins of deity would set foot there. Leader Yun Fei, it seems that the outside world is in chaos. A large number of cultivators from the ruins of deity have invaded the Green Dragon King's fallen deity sea region. Behind him, a cultivator in a white outfit said with fear in his eyes. Yun Fei was very handsome and looked a bit like Yin Zhongzi. He was wearing a white feather robe and looked like an immortal. After hearing that, he nodded and sighed. The soul formation cultivators of the academy have all joined the battle. I heard that the battle hasn't ended yet, but dozens of nascent soul cultivators and thousands of golden core cultivators have died in the water palace. It's very tragic. The cultivator in a white outfit sighed. Do you think the cultivators from the ruins of deity will attack the Yuntian Palace? Very likely. The 7 bandit families are doing a lot of things now. Even the killers of the human world have joined the battle. The ruins of deity have already started a crazy counterattack. Hearing this, Yun Fei's face became solemn. His eyes were extremely sharp as he said in a deep voice. However, we can't interfere in the battle. We can only do our own thing. Aren't the Great Ko family's actions a little too impatient? We've been fighting a war of attrition for thousands of years, but now they're going all out. A disciple of the Yuntian Palace mumbled. Can we? Yun Fei smiled and said, I think the Tai Chu Emperor's strategy is quite good. We're wearing them down, but the Empire of Deity is also growing rapidly. At this rate, they might not be able to recover their land even after 10,000 years. But can we withstand the counterattack of the Empire of Deity? I heard that the real Kong Techu has already left the ruins of Deity. Some disciples were still doubtful. Yes. Yun Fei's face was full of determination and his eyes shone with admiration. Because we have Kong Teichu. How powerful is Kong Teichu? I heard that he once defeated the ancestral patriarchs of the 7 bandit families, including ancestral patriarch Yin Zhongzi? A disciple suddenly asked excitedly. Yes. Although I didn't see it with my own eyes. I was ordered to go to planet Zhiyuan to repair the battlefield. Yun Fei exclaimed excitedly. Oh my god, a few ring-shaped mountains have been destroyed, and those bases have been reduced to pieces. Those were the bases left by the ancient heavenly court, and they were powerful enough to fight soul formation cultivators. They were all smashed to pieces. It was as if a falling planet had hit them several times. Later, I saw the images left in the Dharma artifact. Kong Teichu was so powerful that he completely suppressed the ancestral patriarchs of the 7 bandit families. His divine power was ever-changing. That's so powerful. Is there really such a powerful person in this world? I heard that he's just a nascent soul cultivator. Someone said with admiration and disbelief. Yun Fei said with a hint of disdain. You didn't see it with your own eyes, so of course you wouldn't believe it. I didn't believe it either. But I've seen the surveillance footage. He's like an ancient god. He fights from one side to the other. He punches a ring-shaped mountain. Even the ancient runes are destroyed. That's terrifying. Right. After all, he killed Divine Emperor Hanshi. He must have the combat ability of a soul formation cultivator. Although everyone felt it was unbelievable, they had to believe it. There's a rumor going around that he's not an ordinary person, but a grand cultivator from another planet, or even the reincarnation of a deity. His cultivation art is more advanced than ours. He can give birth to Dharma laws when he forms the nascent soul. And those Dharma laws are particularly terrifying, and there's more than one kind. Yun Fei said calmly and excitedly. In his mind, Jiang Tian was undoubtedly his idol. He worshipped Jiang Tian even more than Yin Zhongzi. TSK, so he's the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. No wonder he's so powerful. Everyone was enlightened and gasped. Those legends were incredible, but if that wasn't the case, they couldn't explain Jiang Tian's strength. Yun Fei said proudly, I heard that Senior Tai Chu went to cultivate in seclusion this time. If he comes out, I'm afraid he'll be the most invincible cultivator in the ruins of immortality. Yun Fei was about to brag about Jiang Tian's combat ability when suddenly, a gloomy laugh came from the sky. Kong Teichu, the most invincible cultivator in the ruins of immortality? Haha, ask him to come out and fight with me. Who's there? Many disciples of the Yuntian Palace were shocked. This person was very far away, but his immortal will covered a radius of 10 miles. He was a peerless master. Yun Fei was shocked and felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly said, Run! It's a master! Chapter 1594. Sensing the invasion of a peerless overlord, Yun Fei crushed the communication Dharma artifact at his waist, and signaled the disciples of Yuntian Palace to escape. The disciples of the Yuntian Palace had been on high alert since the beginning of the battle. After receiving the message, they immediately turned into white beams of light or cranes and flew in all directions like supersonic fighter jets. Land! A shout came from the clouds. An overwhelming heavenly flame descended, covering a radius of 5 kilometers. Boom! Thousands of disciples were immediately frozen. Even Yun Fei, who had reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level, couldn't escape. Moreover, the heavenly fire around them was crazily burning their bodies and souls, but they couldn't even let out a scream. Land! Who's that soul formation grand cultivator? Yun Fei yelled in his mind. Then he saw something. A middle-aged man with a body as tall as a mountain, thick black hair fluttering in the wind, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a gaze that pierced through the void like divine lightning, stood on the bronze chariot and descended rapidly. On his back was a flaming heavenly blade. He had a heaven-warping appearance and an invincible aura. His aura could devour mountains and rivers, and his eyes were filled with arrogance. Nice mountain. The middle-aged man didn't look at the others. Instead, he looked at a mountain 30,000 feet tall. That mountain was next to the Yuntian Palace. There were countless offensive Dao patterns carved on it. It was one of the outer fortresses of the Yuntian Palace. It protected the Yuntian palace from the outside. What does he want? Yunfei was terrified. Then he saw. The middle-aged man suddenly reached out, and a flame appeared between his fingers. There was a loud rumble as he sucked the 300,000-foot mountain into the air. Under the scorching heat of the flames, the towering trees and boulders were pulverized into dust. The golden core stage demonic beasts didn't even have the chance to scream before they were turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, the 30,000-meter-tall mountain was set ablaze. Red lava and flames surrounded it, and black smoke that resembled essence chi crashed into the Yuntian palace with a loud clang. The sound of wind, flames, explosions, sonic booms, and cracks entered his ears like the howling of 10,000 ghosts, forming a torrent of sound. Amidst this ear-piercing and complex noise, the Yuntian palace's countless light shields were erected. Dazzling light shot up into the sky in an attempt to defend themselves. However, all of this was like an eggshell that had been hit by a 1,000-kilogram hammer. It cracked in a second. Clang. The flaming mountain smashed into the Yuntian palace like it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The latter was torn apart in the blink of an eye. The buildings collapsed, and the hundreds of disciples who did not manage to escape in time were killed in an instant. Nothing was left of the Yuntian palace. Everything was turned into fire, lava, and dust. Even the Yuntian mountain had been smashed, and the cultivators were nowhere to be found. Flames soared into the sky, rocks flew into the air, and shockwaves surged. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. At this moment, the world was in a mess. The ground trembled violently, and the mountains within 100 miles shook violently, cracking and collapsing. Even the mountains 1,000 miles away were still trembling. The power of a single strike was so terrifying. Who is he? He created a fire domain and controlled 1,000 people. He's so powerful. All the cultivators were frightened and asked with their immortal will. An old cultivator yelled, "It's Divine Emperor Lihua. How did he find out about our stronghold?" What? Divine Emperor Lihua, the third of the 10 divine emperors? He's a real soul formation grand cultivator. Everyone was shocked. Those who really knew the empire of deity knew that even though the 10 divine emperors were called the same, they weren't all from the same generation. There were different levels. Divine Emperor Lihua was the first 3 divine emperors, and had reached the soul formation level a few thousand years ago. He had been taught by the old ruins emperor himself, and was also called the divine emperor. He was much more powerful than his descendants. Kong Teichu killed my juniors and messed up our country. Anyone who has anything to do with him will die like this palace. Seeing the destroyed Yuntian palace, Inferno Godly Emperor's face did not change at all. His voice was as cold as ice, making people shudder. That kind of soul formation grand cultivator had been through hundreds of battles, and the bloody battle of the royal family. That was why he had become so cold-hearted and regarded human lives as worthless. Not to mention the fact that the Yuntian palace belonged to the 7 great bandits. Killing it would only make him happy. Even when he killed the rebellious imperial concubines, when did he ever feel the slightest ripple in his heart? He didn't immediately use his flame domain to kill everyone. Instead, he waited for the right moment to take control of everyone. All of you submit or die. At that moment, countless people were terrified and no one dared to say a word. All of a sudden, Yunfei became determined and shouted with his immortal will. I, Yunfei, a descendant of the ancient heavenly courts and a disciple of the Yuntian palace, only want to die. Aren't you afraid of death? The Inferno Godly Emperor looked at him with interest and laughed. You're a nascent soul cultivator at 100 years old, and you have a bit of the spirit crane bloodline. If you join the 9 troops, you can at least become a divine general. I only want to die. I don't want to be a slave. Yunfei yelled with his immortal will. As you wish. The Inferno God King showed a look of disdain. He snorted and flicked his finger, sending the Inferno domain towards Yunfei. We want to die. Someone else suddenly yelled. Divine Emperor Lihua was startled. The fire domain stopped again, and he looked at the cultivator. How dare you provoke me? Divine Emperor Lihua, kill me if you dare. We, the survivors of the deity ground, are never afraid of death. Damn it, just kill me. I've already thought of myself as dead since the day I joined the 7 great bandits. Hurry up and give me a quick death. I'll be a hero again after 18 years. Brothers, let's go together. We'll have companions. We'll be brothers again in the next life and fight against the world of darkness. Everyone shouted and sent messages to each other with their immortal will. They didn't have much fear, and there was only hatred that was deep in their bones. Their faces were filled with resolute expressions, and they were impassioned and full of lofty aspirations. Why aren't you afraid of death? Why are you rebelling? Divine Emperor Lihua said. Isn't it good to be obedient? The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality doesn't have to kill you, as long as you listen to them. Who would want to fight and drink blood if they could be happy and safe? We're not doing this for the sake of justice. We're doing this for our descendants. Yunfei said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The imperial dynasty of the Ruins of Immortality has set up a starry sky chi-gathering spell formation to absorb the spiritual energy of all the other worlds into the Ruins of Immortality. These worlds will become dead planets, crumbling and annihilating. Our descendants will all be transformed into quintessence, blood and chi, and become your resources. The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality has lasted for thousands of years, but for the survivors of the deity ground, there are only 2 generations. One is the time when we were slaves, and the other is when we couldn't be slaves. Now it's the time when we can't be slaves. Do I need to say more? We're just fighting for survival. The Ruins of Immortality are too vicious. Everyone was silent. Many cultivators looked solemn and were ready to die. You don't understand. You don't know what kind of disaster the Ruins of Immortality is facing. Divine Emperor Lihua was surprisingly calm. He even looked a bit sad and lowered his head. The descendants of the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality are just trying to survive. There are billions of people in the Ruins of Immortality, but in the end, only a few of us can survive. Your resistance is futile, because in the end, our descendants will all die. Yeah, we're just trying to survive. But between you and me, it's a life and death struggle. So let's do it. Yunfei looked calm and didn't show any fear. Everyone will die sooner or later. You guys can leave first. Divine Emperor Lihua's face was as cold as iron. He flicked his finger. There was a boom. The fire domain was activated and the sky was shattered. Thousands of cultivators of Yuntian Palace were turned into ashes. Even their divine souls were burned to ashes and soon scattered in the air. The moment before they died, they looked at each other and smiled. They hadn't lived their lives in vain. They had fought in the Ruins of Immortality and killed many cultivators of the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality. Their ancestors had also fought bravely, and they had followed the path of their ancestors. Now they had fallen into the hands of the enemy, but they had companions and brothers on the way to the underworld. They weren't alone, so what was there to be dissatisfied with? If they had any regrets, they would only have one thing. They didn't witness Jiang Tian destroy the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality with their own eyes. However, they believed that Jiang Tian would definitely do it, that he would get revenge for them. Under the pressure of Divine Emperor Lihua, none of the 3,000 cultivators of Yuntian Palace surrendered. When the news spread, the world was shocked. Divine Emperor Lihua had personally taken action. The counterattack of the Ruins of Immortality had begun. When the news spread, it was as if a strong wind from the 9 heavens had swept through the stars. Countless cultivators and mortals in the Southgate Galaxy were excited. Compared to the heroes of the Great Ko clan and Jiang Tian, Divine Emperor Lihua's name was too famous. He had entered the Soul Formation realm thousands of years ago, and had swept through the Ruins of Immortality, quelling chaos everywhere. Even the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty had died in his hands, including 3 Soul Formation cultivators. It could be said that his name was almost on par with the Sword God of the Ruins of Emperor's Palace, the Teacher, and the Heavenly River Star Lord. Many cultivators knew that it was because Divine Emperor Lihua had successfully suppressed the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty, that he was very experienced in quelling chaos. Now, after thousands of years of cultivation and seclusion, Divine Emperor Lihua's true strength was much stronger than before. In fact, as the commander-in-chief of this battle, Divine Emperor Lihua rarely took action personally. Most of the time, he stood on the bronze chariot and commanded. Those who took action were basically the cultivators of the academy, ruins of Emperor's Palace, Sky Palace, and many experts of the Grotto Heavens. They all had to listen to his orders. They swept through the strongholds of the Great Ko clan and the Assassin dynasty. Year 9332 of the Ruins of Immortality era, on the 18th of July, the stronghold of the Great Ko clan, Divine Ox Palace, was razed to the ground by the Academy's disciples led by Grand Chancellor Ban Shan. Niu Duotian's personal disciples and 10 nascent soul cultivators were killed. On the 9th of August, Divine Emperor Lai Hua led an army of 100,000 from the Ruins of Immortality and broke through the defense line of the fallen Immortal Sea, the territory of the Great Ko Green Dragon King. The enemy's 30,000 Water Clan cultivators fled in all directions, and 3,000 cultivators were slaughtered. On the 12th of August, the stronghold of the Great Ko clan, Wind Thunder Palace, was destroyed. On the 1st of September, the army of the Ruins of Immortality killed a group of tomb robbers. The Ying and Tian families of the tomb robbers suffered great losses. In a short period of time, news of victory spread throughout the Ruins of Immortality. Divine Emperor Lai Hua led an army that was almost invincible, sweeping through millions of miles. There was even a time when he almost killed Niu Duotian of the 7 Great Ko clan. Previously, the Ruins of Emperor's Palace captured a Gate of Heaven influence. Sky Palace developed a spatial detection artifact that can track spatial traces. The Gate of Heaven influence and many strongholds were instantly exposed. This was the conjecture of the Great Ko clan. This news was despairing. Chapter 1595. In that case, it was not surprising that such a situation would occur. The Ruins Emperor's Palace had been in this world for 10,000 years, and was deeply rooted. There were not many remnants of the deity land in the Ruins of Immortality. There were only 100,000 people in the Great Ko family. There were also some remnants of the deity land, which also numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but they were basically living in seclusion, and had no intention of resisting the Ruins of Immortality. What about the Ruins of Immortality? There were at least a few billion people, at least 5 or 6 million cultivators, and more than 10 times the number of Soul Formation Realm cultivators. The difference in strength was too great. It turned out that the Great Ko family and the Assassins were only able to survive by relying on the Gate of Heaven influence and many secret strongholds and concealment arrays. However, once they were exposed and a head-on battle broke out, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. Haha, the Great Ko family and the Assassin dynasty are just old demon clown. They can't withstand a single blow. The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven said and laughed arrogantly. The beautiful world of the Ruins of Immortality will belong to us after all. Their ancestors were defeated by us, let alone their descendants. They are just ants. I can crush them with one finger. The sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven looked disdainfully. He swept through the strongholds and announced on various occasions. It's been 2 months. I don't know where Kong Teichu is hiding like a turtle. Does he not dare to come out and fight with me? I'm so disappointed in him. Divine Emperor Lai Hua's black hair fluttered in the wind, and his tall and majestic body was awe-inspiring. After sweeping through a stronghold, he looked down at the world and shook his head and sighed. He seemed to be disappointed and disdainful. For the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality, this was news of victory and laughter. But for the Great Ko family and the Assassins, it was bad news. They suffered heavy losses and were in a precarious situation. The strongholds were destroyed one after another, and they could only carry out guerrilla warfare. To put it bluntly, the Great Ko family was now like rats crossing the street. They could only hide in the depths of the desolate mountains and marshes, and they hid their tracks carefully while being beaten to the point they didn't dare show themselves at all. Despite this being the case, it was still difficult to avoid the pursuit of the great army from the Ruins of Immortality. Armored cavalry troops weaved through the skies, trampling through mountains and rivers as they pursued in all directions. There were countless scouting artifacts of various sizes all over the sky, mountains, and cities. Whenever they discovered something, the cultivators of the Ruins of Immortality would immediately swarm over. Often, tens of thousands of cultivators would join forces to attack a few hundred or even a few thousand cultivators. Every day, They were fleeing for their lives. Cultivators were dying all the time. Even Niu Duotian, Tu Fei, and the other leaders of the bandits were injured. Although Divine Emperor Liao Hua had only attacked a few times, he was able to severely injure semi-god realm warriors and destroy mountains and rivers within a radius of 100 miles. Some people had already called him the first Divine Emperor, and the fourth unparalleled giant. Even the three unparalleled giants were overshadowed by him. As for Jiang Tian, he had not dared to come out and fight for many days. He had already become a laughingstock. He even established a new celestial court, and called himself the Celestial Emperor. He's trying to take over our great rivers and mountains. He's really the king of the south. An ant wants to swallow the sky. How laughable. After all, he's just a bumpkin from a remote planet. It's normal for him to be afraid when facing a veteran semi-god realm warrior, like Divine Emperor Liao Hua. I heard that his subordinates, the 7 bandits, were beaten until they vomited blood and cried for their parents. He didn't even dare to come out. How laughable. On the ruins of immortality, mortals and cultivators alike, billions of people were full of mockery and disdain. In a secret stronghold located in the barren mountains and rivers, thousands of cultivators were exhausted and dusty. Their dharma artifacts were damaged, their armors were broken, and their bodies were stained with blood. Many cultivators were injured. Some took elixirs and sat cross-legged to meditate. Some glanced at the sky outside vigilantly like frightened birds. Some were lying on the ground and moaning. They didn't even have any elixirs to heal their wounds. They could only use their dharma power to repair their broken bodies. The bandit family had a strong foundation, but they had been fighting almost every day. They had almost used up all their elixirs. Niu Duotian was smoking a pipe. His face was sad, and his eyes were hollow. His 10 personal disciples were all dead. Tu Fei had just come for a meeting after a big battle. His divine treasures were cracked, and the blood stains on his body had coagulated. His hair was stained with blood. He was sitting on a rock, breathing heavily. Tian Shu was holding a big wine jar, and drinking himself into a stupor. Thinking of his dead comrades, he couldn't help but sob softly. Bai Muxia had been looking around and adjusting the concealment arrays. When she saw those injured cultivators, she couldn't help but cry. She hated herself for being so useless. After the big battle started, she had been adjusting the support arrays of the Gate of Sky bearing everywhere to avoid being tracked. But she had only succeeded 1/3 of the time. The rest had been discovered. But in fact, it wasn't her fault. Although she had been taught by Jiang Tian, it was only for a short time. She couldn't be compared with the Sky Palace, which was proficient in space arrays, or the Grand Chancellor of the Academy, Jade Lotus Fairy. Even the Fu brothers, who had always been lively and heartless, sat on the ground obediently and said nothing. I've contacted the assassin dynasties in the Heavenly Court and Hell. They refused to join the new Heavenly Court. The assassin emperor Ji Tao looked solemn and sad as he talked to Yin Zhongzi. After Jiang Tian left the ruins of immortality and started his seclusion, the 7 great bandits were under the command of Yin Zhongzi. He made all the decisions. Okay. Yin Zhongzi nodded. He wasn't surprised, but a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly again. Before this, the bandits and assassins had attacked crazily and gained a lot. Some of the low-level sects and hostile forces that had been suppressed by the ruins of immortality were ready to join forces with the bandits and assassins to rebel against the ruins of immortality. At least they could take advantage of the chaos and profit from it. In just 2 months, earth-shaking changes had taken place. More and more followers of the Inferno Godly Emperor were gathering. Even the small and medium-sized sects that had stayed out of the war had come to meet the Inferno Godly Emperor, who was directly related to the ancient emperor. They joined the war to besiege and kill the 7 great bandits and the assassins of the human world. At first, Yin Zhongzi still had a glimmer of hope. With the help of the assassins from the Heavenly Court and Hell, they could hold on for another month. But now, they might not even be able to hold on for a month. Seniors, what should we do? Ji Yusha couldn't stand it anymore. She looked a little angry and shouted, if it weren't for the wrong strategy made by Senior Tai Chu, our sky-bearing gate wouldn't have been exposed, and we wouldn't have suffered so many casualties. In such a short time, Almost half of our assassins in the human world have been killed. Bastard. Ji Tao couldn't listen to her anymore. He was angry and slapped her face, shouting, "That sky-bearing gate was captured 100 years ago. Sky Palace and the Academy spent 100 years to crack it. Do you think the array masters of Sky Palace and the Academy would have been able to crack it if it had just been captured in a year or two? It can be said that when the sky-bearing gate was captured 100 years ago, we were destined to lose today. This has nothing to do with His Majesty Tai Chu's strategy. If you dare to be disrespectful to His Majesty again, I'll kill you." Ji Yusha burst into tears. She covered her face and didn't speak, but she despised Jiang Tian, who had caused all this to the extreme. "You went into seclusion during the war. What a joke. You must be afraid of the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. That's why you asked us to block the knives for you. Hold on. Preserve your strength." Yin Zhongzi stood up, pulled himself together, glanced at everyone, and said in a deep voice, "Before Senior Tai Chu comes out of seclusion, as long as we can survive and preserve the roots of the new heavenly court in the future, it will be the greatest victory." At this time, a disciple flew over and said, "Grand Ancestor, not good. 100 miles away, there are 3,000 soldiers from the Ruins of Immortality patrolling. They seem to be led by 2 semi-god realm warriors. Alert! If they don't find us, don't do anything. If they find us, rush out immediately." Yin Zhongzi gnashed his teeth and said, "At this time, in the cold and lonely hibernating star, in this inhuman dimension, Jiang Tian's cultivation had reached the moment when he was about to make a breakthrough. Water and fire are incompatible. Today, I finally condensed the laws of water and fire. However, the process was too difficult." Above the ruined crater, Jiang Tian sat cross-legged in the void, with a solemn look in his eyes, and sighed. Why were cultivators so much more powerful than ordinary people? In short, their essence, energy and spirit were just powerful. No matter how high a cultivator's level was, they couldn't get rid of those 3 factors. The corresponding essence, energy and spirit were the body, true essence and dharma power, or mind energy. Specifically, Jiang Tian's breakthrough this time was to form a chaotic divine body, divine infant and divine laws. Before that, Jiang Tian had already condensed the chaotic divine body and the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant. The last step was also the most critical one. It was to merge the 9 laws into the chaotic divine laws and refine them inside and outside the chaotic divine infant and divine body. Chapter 1596. At that moment, the laws of water and fire that had been tempered were circling around the divine infant in Jiang Tian's spirit embryo. It was clearly the vermilion bird's flames that soared into the sky, blazing and scorching hot. However, it was like a surging wave or a trickle of water that was pervasive and pervasive. The mystic water was clearly bone-chilling and heavy like a mountain, but it soared into the sky in the shape of a flame, like a heavenly fire burning the plains. Moreover, the two could switch at will, sometimes completely scarlet red, sometimes completely pitch black. It was extremely strange. "Refine!" Jiang Tian shouted again. The spirit embryo shrank and suppressed the laws of metal into the laws of water and fire. The laws of metal shone brightly, and they were like pieces of a heavenly sword that could split the world. There was a loud rumble. After a long time, there was a loud explosion. The spirit embryo in Jiang Tian's body shook, and the small nascent soul roared as if it was cheering. The laws of metal were also merged. The laws of metal, vermilion bird, true fire, and mystic water all had 3 elements. Take the laws of mystic water for example. It used to be as heavy as a mountain and could destroy everything. But now, it had the agility of flames and the sharpness of the laws of metal. Merge. In the end, Jiang Tian finally managed to merge all 9 types of laws together. There was a loud rumble. At this moment, the void within 100,000 miles around star Zhiyuan suddenly trembled violently. Countless great Daos roared and the space trembled. Many shining stars in the sky seemed to be about to fall from the sky. As for planet Zhiyuan, it trembled violently, as if it was about to expand and burst out of the folded space, or jump out of the folded space and appear in the starry sky. The golden core was formed by condensing the essence chi of heaven and earth. Of course, there would be thunder tribulations. When Jiang Tian was forming the divine-grade golden core at the bottom of the Tunguska Fiend Lake, he had cut off 9 laws and refined them into his golden core. Even though he was tens of thousands of miles underground, he still attracted the attention of the great Taos of heaven and earth and thunder tribulations. And now, Jiang Tian had cut off the divine laws and refined them into his nascent soul. The world immediately sensed it, and countless thunder tribulations were about to happen. And this thunder tribulation was more than 100 times more terrifying than the one he had faced before. The tribulation is coming. Yi Gongming was shocked. He was about to let the great co-warriors hide in the underground array, when he suddenly saw the fluctuation of law on Jiang Tian's body suddenly retracting. In the blink of an eye, the world of Zhiyuan regained its calm. Tens of thousands of kilometers away, in the depths of the starry sky, the Sea of Lightning and the Thunder Dragons seemed to be unable to find their target. After circling around in confusion for a while, they actually gradually shrank and dissipated. The thunder tribulation disappeared? Yi Gongming was surprised. Could it be that Master has failed in condensing his nascent soul? Ying Shan looked at Jiang Tian on the screen of light. Suddenly he was startled. They saw that Jiang Tian was still sitting cross-legged in the void. The aura on his body was faintly discernible. His body, which was originally shining with treasure light, was now dim and lifeless. He was like an ordinary mortal body, and was far less sharp than before. But at the same time, Ying Shan felt that Jiang Tian seemed to have existed for all eternity just by sitting there. Every action he made, every movement he made, every breath he took, was filled with a Tao aura as if it was in harmony with the great Tao. Could it be that you don't know that Master has the heaven-deceiving mysterious technique? He can restrain all aura, divine abilities and laws. Yi Gongming glanced at him and softly said. Ying Shan released his divine senses and carefully scanned the surroundings. He could feel that the endless laws in the world were resonating with Jiang Tian. With every breath he took, the uncontrollable laws would fluctuate and erupt with a tide of laws. They were situated in the world of laws, and Jiang Tian was like a deity who ruled over the endless laws. He was the ancestor of all deities, the sovereign of the heavens. Nascent soul, he succeeded? Ying Shan was frantically screaming in his heart. This heaven-deceiving mysterious technique was too tyrannical. It could actually allow him to avoid the nascent soul tribulation. Furthermore, what kind of law did he condense? It was unknown how many times stronger it was than ordinary deities. It was like he was a deity nurtured by the heavens and the earth. This law was a part of him. Actually, his feeling was not wrong. Even though Jiang Tian condensed a deity realm nascent soul, it was still a deity realm nascent soul. This deity realm did not refer to the deity realm. It referred to a deity nurtured by the heavens and the earth. It was also called an innate deity, a deity that came before the heavens and the earth. A life form of the deity world. And why were the life forms of the deity world powerful? It was because all the life forms there were formed by the great Tao. Manipulating the great Tao was like manipulating one's own body. It was as easy as manipulating one's own arm. Naturally, they were incomparably powerful. The life forms of the deity world far surpassed the life forms of the immortal laws, sacred laws and laws. As for the origin chi life forms and the divine soul life forms, they were even more incomparable. It was not an exaggeration to say that a little rabbit that fell from the deity world could easily crush a deity transformation realm cultivator in the mortal universe. Jiang Tian finally moved. He stretched his fleshy body, stepped on the ground and stretched his arms. Hong Long. The moment Jiang Tian landed on the ground, the area within a radius of 500 kilometers trembled violently. Many huge ravines split open and rapidly extended to dozens of kilometers away. Yi Gongming, Ying Shan and the others were shaken to the point of being thrown off their feet. And in the void, as Jiang Tian stretched his body, the vast and mighty Yuan Qi turned into a grade 12 storm that swept across the sky. Azure Dragon Mystic Water, Vermilion Bird True Fire, Sea Calming Ice God, Ying Long Thick Earth and many other laws appeared. Fragments of the great Tao floated up and down, almost turning into a sky visible to the naked eye. Behind Jiang Tian, there was a violent Yuan Qi storm that wreaked havoc in all directions, sweeping across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Pung pung pung. The tall craters and ancient bases, despite having countless formations and restrictions, could no longer withstand the impact. After a wave of violent tremors, they were destroyed and turned into a tide of boulders that rolled far away. Yingshan drilled into the ground and was almost crushed alive by the surging earth. He hurriedly escaped and hugged Yi Gongming's thigh, who was supporting his father in the void. He said with heartache, "The bases that have existed for tens of thousands of years. What a pity." Amen. This was the first time Jiang Tian displayed this strength that had expanded by 10 to 100 times. He felt uncomfortable and did not expect it to be so terrifying. Looking at the great bandits who were blown dozens of kilometers away, Jiang Tian hurriedly retracted his aura. He cupped his fist towards Yi Gongming and smiled apologetically. "Senior, I'm sorry. I did not expect it to be like this." Yi Gongming took 2 deep breaths before dispelling that suffocating feeling. He laughed loudly, saying, "Haha, master is too polite. Now that you are out of closed-door cultivation, do the generals of our new heavenly court still need this hidden base? We can just blow up the ruins, Emperor." Yingshan immediately reacted after hearing that. He was ineffably excited and rubbed his palms together, saying, Right. Master, now that you are out of closed-door cultivation, we can finally go all out. We can revive our great mountains and rivers. This place is unbearably cold, without any light or plants. It's fine if we don't want it. Ha 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 ha." Jiang Tian smiled faintly. He closed his eyes slightly and reflected on himself. His divine sense swept across his body, checking the results of this closed-door cultivation. His divine sense slowly swept across his sea of consciousness, nascent soul for limbs and 5 viscera and 6 bowels. After a long time, Jiang Tian finally opened his eyes slowly, revealing a joyous expression. Currently, his cultivation was at the true nascent soul realm in the deity world. His godly laws, godly body, and godly soul had all reached the highest realm. Immortal cultivators in the mortal realm usually focused on one aspect: chi refinement, body refinement, and spirit refinement. After all, very few people could take care of all 3 at the same time, cultivating all 3 to the peak. This consumed too much energy and resources. Disregarding other things, just condensing a golden core realm godly body for Jiang Tian had expended countless resources. Purely counting ordinary golden cores, he would have to plunder and condense thousands or even tens of thousands of them before he could condense them. In the mortal realm cultivation world, even those immortal holy grounds and peerless sects did not have such extravagant methods. To be able to cultivate all 3 at the same time, it had to be a top-grade immortal sect to have such a foundation. Counting, there were less than 10 in the entire mortal realm, or the major sects in the deity world. Therefore, Jiang Tian's current state was supreme and invincible among his peers in the central galaxy, not to mention in the mortal realm, even in the deity world. Not to mention the soul formation cultivators in the human realm. Jiang Tian could even fight with the soul formation cultivators in the deity world. At least, he had the ability to escape unscathed. As for the Ruins Emperor and the other giants of the Ruins of Immortality, they're just trash raised by incomplete cultivation systems at the edge of the barren land. With my current nascent soul cultivation, the 10,000 years of battle experience and the many divine arts I have accumulated in my previous life, as well as ancient treasures such as the Absolute Sword and the Myriad Stone Cauldron, as well as deity materials and divine materials, I don't believe that there's anyone I can't kill. Soon Jiang Tian calmed himself down, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He flicked his sleeves and said, "Open the gate of sky influence. We should go to the ruins of immortality to take a look." The next afternoon, in the middle of the ruins of immortality, deep inside the barren Xiantian mountain range, a young man in black and 2 old men suddenly appeared in the forest. Many monsters around felt the powerful energy of the soul formation cultivators, and were so scared that they knelt down and retreated. Of course they were Jiang Tian, Yi Gongming and Yingshan. Yi Gongming still felt it was unbelievable. This wasn't the reception array of the Gate of Sky Influence. Instead, it was the place where the great co-warriors were hiding. The reception array they had arrived at was a few 100,000 miles away from here. However, after Jiang Tian confirmed the location, He waved his sleeves and brought them across a distance of several 100,000 miles in the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After all, soul formation cultivators would need at least half a day, or even 2 or 3 days. That speed was far faster than any other soul formation cultivators, and was almost comparable to an ancient teleportation array. Master, you're finally here. Your subordinate congratulates you on your breakthrough and ascension to the limit, my lord. Master, we've failed our mission. We've failed. We've failed miserably. We've tarnished the prestige of the new heavenly court. Please punish us. When a hidden array was activated and Jiang Tian entered the temporary stronghold, many great co-warriors kowtowed with tears in their eyes. Some were excited, some were hopeful, and some were guilty. It's not easy for you to hold on until now. Furthermore, you haven't lost. As long as you're alive and fighting, you haven't lost. Jiang Tian glanced at the cultivators there, and saw that many of them were wounded. Even the 7 great bandits' leaders and Jitao were wounded. But Bai Wuxia was the most seriously injured. At this time, she was lying on a bed made of ice crystals. Her delicate body was covered in countless wounds and blisters. The laws of fire surrounded her, and even penetrated deep into her organs, constantly burning her dantian and soul. Her life was hanging by a thread and she had fainted from the pain. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's pupils shrank and his face was filled with anger. Last time in the Black Wind Mountain Range, we were discovered by the cultivators of the ruins of immortality. Bai Wuxia stayed behind to use the array to stop the enemy. In the end, Divine Emperor Lai Hua personally took action. His law of fire was too strong, and we couldn't get rid of it. Niu Duotian took a puff of his pipe and wiped his tears. Of course, he was a real man with unyielding character. He had experienced countless battles over the past few thousand years, and had seen too many deaths. When had he ever shed a single tear? Bai Wuxia was simply too obedient and sensible. Now that she was in such a miserable state, his heart ached for her. Divine Emperor Lai Hua? Jiang Tian's face turned cold. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "Spread the news. Tell the world that the new heavenly court master, Kong Teichu, is waiting for him at the Black Heaven Mountain Range. If he has the guts, then bring it on. It's best if he brings his zombie ancestor, the old ruins emperor, with him. I'm going to twist their heads off." Chapter 1597. At this moment, Jiang Tian was very confident. Every word he said was like a peerless heavenly sword, with a soaring aura. The power of self-confidence, the sharpness, the indomitable spirit, made people feel a kind of firmness, invincibility, destroying everything. "My lord, we have to be careful." Yin Zhongzi walked over. He was a descendant of the ancient heavenly court's divine general. Although the immortal Crane bloodline was very faint, he had always been handsome and untainted. He was like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. But now, his feather clothes were stained with blood and his star crown was broken. He couldn't even maintain his elegance during the battle. His expression was solemn and worried as he reminded Jiang Tian. After all, that was a divine emperor who had once swept through the ruins of immortality and defeated the great bandits. In terms of strength, he was second only to the peerless giants. "Pass down my order." Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron, and his expression was firm. He was not moved at all, nor did he hesitate at all. He was very confident. After this breakthrough, he was no longer the same as before. His strength had increased greatly, more than 10 times or 100 times. He was not afraid at all. Moreover, the assassins of the great bandits had been defeated consecutively. They needed a great victory to boost their morale. Otherwise, the team might collapse. "Senior Yun Zhongzi, don't hesitate anymore. My lord is back, so we should take the initiative to attack and sweep through everything." Yi Chun roared loudly, his voice carrying a bit of resentment and anger. They had been chased by the army of the ruins of immortality for 2 months. They were like stray dogs, which made them sullen and angry. "Yin Zhongzi, don't hesitate. Let's fight him. We should believe in the strength of His Majesty Taichu." Tu Fei and the Green Dragon King persuaded, their fighting spirit surging. Even if Jiang Tian was no match for him, they could still kill Divine Emperor Lai Hua together. "Okay, I will obey your Majesty's order." Yin Zhongzi finally nodded. He gathered many disciples and asked them to spread the news to the entire ruins of immortality to lure divine Emperor Lai Hua over. When Bai Muxia heard all this, she opened her eyes with difficulty and turned her head. She seemed to want to say something, but she was too injured to speak. Don't move. My cultivation base is different from before, and there are too many variables. Trying to deduce the outcome of this battle will be futile. Jiang Tian smiled and placed his hand on Bai Muxia's forehead. Bai Muxia closed her eyes obediently, but she was a little embarrassed. She turned her head away and said sadly, "My lord, I'm too ugly like this. I can't see you." A drop of tear rolled down from the corner of her eye, but it was evaporated by the law of fire. Her love for Jiang Tian ran deep. In fact, Jiang Tian was such a peerless hero. Which girl wouldn't fall in love with him? Whether it was her, Long Xingnan, Princess Li Qi, or Ao Jiao, all of them more or less had feelings for Jiang Tian. However, they knew that the relationship between Jiang Tian and his wife was very deep and dignified, so they didn't dare to casually reveal it. Silly girl, beauty and ugliness are just superficial appearances. Why do you care so much about it? Jiang Tian smiled. But, I hope that in your memory, I'm the beautiful girl who played the zither and sang on the fallen leaf lake. Bai Muxia turned her head, and her eyes were filled with tears of blood. She stared at Jiang Tian and said affectionately, "I know that you and mistress have a deep relationship, and you definitely won't like me. However, I'll fight to the death for your ideals and your struggle. In the future, you will definitely remember me deeply. At that time, I'll live in your memory and occupy a place. That's my greatest fortune." Her voice was choked with sobs, like a cuckoo crying blood. Long Xingnan and the other female cultivators turned their backs and cried silently. Jiang Tian heard this and his heart trembled slightly. He said softly, "Is that why you stayed behind and used the array to stop the Inferno Divine Emperor? Even if I didn't take the initiative to attack, the Inferno Divine Emperor would not let me go. I've been spreading your deeds in the Prenglai world every day. The Empire of the Immortal Ruins has already listed me as a must-kill." She suddenly showed a smile. The blisters on her face were squeezed together and burst. Blood flowed down her face. She said softly, "Let's not talk about this. My dejected lord, I feel very peaceful to be able to wait until you come back before I die." As she spoke, her eyes became as gentle as water, and she said with infinite longing, "You seem to have become stronger, just like the hero in my dream. My lord, I believe that you will definitely be able to realize your dreams. It's good that I die with such a perfect memory. In my memory you will always be so perfect. You won't die." Jiang Tian's tone changed for the first time. He looked into Bai Muxia's eyes with unprecedented seriousness and said firmly, "As long as I, Kong Teichu, am here, you won't die. Even if you die, I will use your divine soul seed and the creation substance to help you reconstruct your body. From today onwards, no one in this world will be able to harm the people who belong to me. Jiang Taichu, this is my promise to you." After he finished speaking, his face became serious and he activated the divine law. Swallow. Crack. The nascent soul in Jiang Tian's body suddenly opened its eyes, and the Taotai divine law rushed out of the small divine disk behind him. The divine law turned into the form of the Taotai divine beast, and sat above Bai Muxia. It only opened its mouth and inhaled. Crackle. The Inferno divine law, which was originally indestructible and could melt everything, even had fragments of the great path floating up and down. It was like a piece of paper, cracking and turning into a trickle. The Taotai divine law was like a whale sucking in water. In the blink of an eye, it was swallowed up and quickly returned to Jiang Tian's body. She broke the Inferno Divine Emperor's divine law so easily. There are even fragments of the great path. You really have to look at her in a different light. My lord has evolved to the extreme and become stronger. Moreover, she is unprecedentedly strong. Many of the great bandits and heroes were stunned to the extreme. They could feel the strength of Jiang Tian's divine law. Even Ji Yusha, who had always disliked Jiang Tian, was stunned and muttered, "Maybe she really is qualified to fight with the Inferno Divine Emperor." Whirling divine tree, create all things. Jiang Tian shouted again. The whirling divine tree appeared above Bai Muxia again. The divine law was like a green silk ribbon, nourishing all things and creating life. This whirling divine tree was 10 times stronger than before. It was full of surging life energy. Starlight shone between the branches and leaves, as if it contained a small world full of life energy. It was constantly rotating and growing. I told you you won't die. Jiang Tian let out a low roar and performed a hand seal, pointing at Bai Muxue in the air. In front of Bai Muxue's shocked eyes, countless runes formed by the divine tree's divine law shone with a bright green light and enveloped Bai Muxue. Bai Muxue felt as if she had returned to her mother's womb. She had never felt that kind of warmth, comfort, and security. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the blisters on Bai Muxue's body cracked and faded away. Her snow-white skin regrew. Even her internal organs and damaged dantian were restored in a matter of seconds. The entire stronghold was full of vitality. The divine tree's divine law floated up and down, as if it were the realm of deities. At this time, an explosive piece of news spread throughout the boundless ruins of immortality, shaking everyone's hearts. Kong Teichu is back. He challenged the Inferno Divine Emperor to a battle on the Tianxian mountain range. He said that he would twist the Inferno Divine Emperor's head off. The entire ruins of deities was dumbfounded. Is Kong Teichu crazy? How dare he challenge the Inferno Divine Emperor? The sect master of the Tianmeng Grotto Heaven sneered. Next to him, Zhao Shanhe and a few elders also sneered. The last battle that Jiang Tian had observed was when Jiang Tian fought with Ban Shan, Black White and sword servant Tong Yujian. When they killed Tong Yujian, Jiang Tian didn't do anything because he used Tong Yujian as a whetstone for the leaders of the bandits. The battle at the Water Moon Grotto Heaven hadn't been exposed yet. In fact, the Water Moon Grotto Heaven had become a mole and had been sending messages to the bandits. Otherwise, the latter might have been eliminated. So, in the eyes of the cultivators of the ruins of deities, Jiang Tian's strength was only on par with Ban Shan's. But Ban Shan and the others were much weaker than the Inferno Divine Emperor. The gap between Jiang Tian and the others should also be huge, or even bigger. Perhaps Jiang Taichu deliberately set up a maze to lure you into the trap. He wants to join forces to kill the Inferno Divine Emperor? He defeated the Inferno Divine Emperor with his own strength? I don't care if you believe it or not, but I don't. The sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven thought of another possibility. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks are nothing. The leader of another large sect sneered. Kong Teichu is just a coward. He's running around and doesn't dare to fight head-on. If he shows up, he'll be killed. If Kong Teichu is a coward, he should have the self-awareness of a coward. He should hide in a dark corner and eat some leftovers. Why does he have to jump out? Does he think he's a dragon in the sky? Song Baoxin said mockingly in the cafeteria of the academy. Next to him, the dark-skinned servant, Asang, covered her mouth and chuckled. Ha ha ha, Song Baoxin, that's a good analogy. Cheng Aojuan, Su Chongqing and the other elite disciples also laughed. The disciples of the academy were still the descendants of the deity land, and were selected from the level 2 and level 3 worlds. But interests would make people forget history. They didn't think they were the descendants of the Shang and Ao emperors. They didn't want to look into it, or even if they knew the truth, they wouldn't care. But brother, I have an idea. Brothers, please take a look. Song Baoxin had just entered the war god role in an examination, and was able to enter the back mountain of the academy. He had even been taught by the headmaster, Ban Shan and Jade Lotus Fairy. So his status had become very high and he was on par with Su Chongqing and the others. He was also in high spirits. I heard that Kong Teichu and Deco are killing and robbing everywhere. They have a lot of resources. Should we take advantage of this? Okay. Kong Teichu is dead. Let's kill him while he's weak. Let's take his treasures while he's dead. Su Chongqing's eyes were filled with resentment as he spoke viciously. In the battle between Jiang Tian and the sword servant in the steel forest, his arm was cut off by the sword servant's sword chi. Later, he asked the Grand Chancellor of the Academy's back mountain to help him, and he was able to create a new Kailan arm. The pain of that day caused him to always harbor hatred towards Jiang Tian. It was strange. He was injured by the sword servant, but he hated Jiang Tian. Maybe he thought that Jiang Tian was easy to bully, or maybe he was used to being a servant, so he didn't hate his master anymore. The disciples of the academy immediately reached an agreement and formed a troop of disciples to head to the Xiantian mountain range. Not only the disciples of the academy, in fact, all the grotto heavens, large sects, families, small and medium-sized sects, and even some gangs were heading to the Xiantian mountain range to witness the death of Kong Techu and the power of the burning fire divine emperor. More importantly, they wanted to hit Jiang Tian when he was down, take advantage of the chaos, and snatch the cultivation resources of Jiang Tian and the assassins. Chapter 1598. The Xiantian mountain range was originally very wild. The mountains were steep and lofty, and the lakes were deep like the sea. The terrain was complicated, and the miasma was everywhere. It was unfavorable for human cultivation, and all kinds of animals and plants were demonized. But in the past few days, there was a hubbub of voices. Crystal warships, cloud towers, flying boats, flying swords, and even palaces arrived. They floated in the air as far as the eye could see, blotting out the sky. Ruins, Emperor's Palace, Sky Palace, 100 Moon Academy, various grotto heavens, sects, aristocratic families, and huge cities gathered there. They each occupied a corner of the sky, and their auras soared. There were hundreds of thousands of cultivators gathered. All kinds of demon beasts and ferocious birds in the mountain range, even those at the Golden Core realm, fled in fear. Some hid in their caves, trembling, not daring to show their faces. Senior brother, is Zuowang Peak where Kong Techu resides? The Academy's disciple army came in 3 flying boats, and there were 1,000 of them. Huge flags hung in the air, and the flying boats shone with treasure light. Chancellor Banshan personally presided over it, looking very imposing. Among the crowd on one of the flying boats, the Academy's new disciple, Song Baoxin, looked excitedly at a mountain 100 miles away and asked. Although he had obtained a place in the Academy, and even had a half-step nascent soul cultivation, he did not stand out among the hundreds of thousands of cultivators. Taking the ruins Emperor's Palace as an example, there were dozens of royal descendants who had reached nascent soul cultivation. Furthermore, there were various divine generals, sword servants, and disciples of Sword God. Yes. Cheng Aojuan nodded with a serious expression. Zuowang Peak had arrays and restrictive barriers. Although they were temporary, their divine senses could not penetrate them. They could only see a blob of vibrant green spirit qi surging as though it was healing. Senior brother Aojuan, fellow Taoists, do you think Kong Techu can win this time? Su Chongqing suddenly interjected from the side. He can't win, Cheng Aojuan said with disdain. The sect masters of the 6 grotto heavens are all here, and so are the disciples of Sword God. Even if Inferno Divine Emperor doesn't take action personally, the 100,000 cultivators alone can tear Kong Techu to pieces. His gaze was focused as he said coldly, do you know why the headmaster of the Academy, the Sword God, and the Sky River Star Sovereign didn't do it themselves? Sky Palace used the purple star number to calculate that Kong Techu was weaker than Fire God King. So this time, they wanted Fire God King to cut off his head to establish his authority. Aha. Right. Of course I have to save my trump card for last. Kong Techu is only a bandit, and he doesn't have the qualifications to make the 3 great giants of the ruins of immortality make a move against him. When he falls, we'll swarm him, kill the 7 great bandits, and steal their treasures. Song Baoxin rubbed his palms together like a housefly and laughed heartily. He was so excited that the freckles on his face shone faintly like black sesame seeds. Quite a number of disciples in the surroundings looked over in displeasure, and Chancellor Banshan even glared at him fiercely. It was only then that Song Baoxin shrunk his head and pulled on Cheng Aojuan's sleeves. With his telepathic thoughts, he said anxiously, Dao brother, I heard that Kong Techu has a disciple called Long Xingnan. She was the saintess of the Dragon Gate back then. Don't kill her later. How about we capture her alive and make her our little brother's maid? I don't need the other heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Sigh. All right. Cheng Aojuan smiled helplessly. Song Baoxin's black-faced maid, Sang, looked over resentfully and sighed inwardly. At the same time, the various grand chancellors of the academies, the sect masters of the grotto heavens, the divine generals of the ruins Emperor's Palace, the sword cultivators, and the heads of the aristocratic families were also communicating with each other through telepathy. It's time. The Inferno Godly Emperor should be here by now, right? The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven said in a low voice as he pinched his fingers together. Soon. Once Kong Techu is dead, we can steal the treasures. Everyone looked somewhat anxious. Fellow Taoists of Sky Palace, are there any hidden arrays or restrictions in this place? Did Kong Techu set up an ambush? Don't drag us into this. Someone asked worriedly. Fellow Taoists, Sky Palace has already sent out 300 Saikongs and Sky Overseers to investigate this place. There are no ambushes or offensive arrays here. It's just a very primitive mountain range. A great Seikong transmitted his voice through telepathy. The assistants and disciples of the Academy's Array Formation School's Grand Chancellor, Fairy Jade Lotus, have also done their own calculations. There are indeed no arrays. Everyone can watch the battle without worry. The Academy quickly came to a conclusion. This Kong Techu is courting death. Does he really think he has the ability to take on the Inferno Godly Emperor? Everyone was dumbfounded and in disbelief. How long do you think Kong Techu can last under the Inferno Godly Emperor's unparalleled might? This poor Taoist is guessing that it's half an hour. An itinerant Taoist said with a smile on his flying sword. This old man is just guessing. 10 flicks of the fingers. If you're not convinced, you can bet on it. Another great cultivator said disdainfully. There were also many businesses that had come to set up bets. The cultivators could bet on how long Jiang Tian could last. No one believed that Jiang Tian could defeat the Inferno Godly Emperor. At this moment, Divine Emperor Sun Xiao and Xian Nu of the Water Moon Heavenly Abode looked extremely anxious. Alas, Senior Taichu is too reckless. The chances of him winning are slim. If he's killed and his soul is extracted, we'll be exposed. That'll be a disaster. Divine Emperor Xian Nu sighed. It's too late to say anything. He's so stubborn and didn't even discuss it with us. What can we do? Divine Emperor Sun Xiao was also extremely helpless. He had already ordered his disciples to escape immediately once Kong Techu was defeated. There was no need to go back to the Water Moon Heavenly Abode. In addition, many surveillance Dharma artifacts flew around the Zhuowang Peak and floated around. Huge golden light screens were displayed. Even if everyone was 100 miles away, they could still see it clearly without using their immortal will. These light screens were not only set up in the Xiantian mountain range, but also in thousands of cities and sects across the ruins of immortality. They could be watched from a distance through Dharma artifacts. Billions of creatures in the ruins of immortality were watching this battle closely. No one could remain calm. Then, the sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven suddenly looked into the distance and said, "He's here." Everyone saw it. Suddenly, a divine rainbow that pierced through heaven and earth shot over from the distant horizon. Gold, green, and fiery red intertwined, truly resembling a rainbow. The Tianmong Grotto Heaven pays tribute to Divine Emperor Lai Hua. Congratulations to the Divine Emperor Lai Hua. Your magic power is deep, your life is long, and your achievements will shake the galaxy. Zongzi Zhao Shanhe and the cultivators of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven were startled. They all knelt on the ground. When the Inferno Godly Emperor arrived, his arrogance soared into the sky. He was extremely arrogant and unruly. The divine rainbow was resplendent, and the great Tao resonated. Many grotto heavens, sects and family palaces, buildings, flying boats and battleships parted to form a passage in the shape of a fan. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was at the center. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators knelt down and worshipped him. That long streak of light tore through the void like it was splitting the wind and chopping the waves. It suddenly descended, and an ancient bronze chariot appeared. The ancient chariot was mighty and domineering. It was engraved with the moon, stars, flowers, birds, fish and insects. It seemed to be able to suppress the world. It slowly stopped 100 miles away from the Zhuowang Peak. Kong Techu, come out and fight. I'll kill you. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was in the center. His black hair was like a waterfall and his body was as tall as a mountain. His armor was bright, and he carried the ardent flame sword on his back. Flames surrounded the sky and a true dragon and a divine phoenix danced on it. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. At this time, The Inferno godly emperor really had the aura of a peerless emperor. That kind of aura of supremacy was exceptionally frightening. Even many living fossils of the older generation couldn't contend with him, and they didn't even dare to look him in the eye. Chapter 1599. Divine Emperor Lihua. Who do you think you are to be so arrogant and overbearing? If I didn't have the confidence to kill you, would I expose myself like this? Jiang Tian stepped out of the seal. He was dressed in black, had black hair, a tall figure, and a handsome face. He had an otherworldly and frightening temperament. Behind him, many bandits and assassins followed. Tu Fei had been completely restored by Jiang Tian. He was full of vigor as he dragged an explosive disc array. It was very frightening. He shouted, "Your Majesty, kill this fake emperor and destroy his fake dynasty. This throne should belong to us. Divine Emperor Lihua, quickly offer your concubine and princess to our heavenly emperor as slaves. If they are beautiful and serve well, we can spare your worthless life." Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui hung upside down in the void, hugging their shoulders and laughing evilly. They were fearless and completely played Divine Emperor Lihua like a monkey. Divine Emperor Lihua, do you want to redeem your father's golden underwear? I don't want many crystals, just 1 billion or 800 million will do. Yinglong solemnly took out a pair of golden underwear and showed it to everyone. This is a supreme treasure, worthy of its name. I've always been honest when doing business. If you don't want it, someone else will want it. The highest bidder wins. Let the auction begin. Damn it, no more. Tian Shu, who was trembling in fear, gulped down a jar of strong liquor. Suddenly, his rat eyes widened and his aura soared. He even dared to kill a cat demon. He slapped his storage bag and took out a skeleton. He danced with it and smacked a kiss on the skull's mouth. He said loudly with the smell of alcohol, "Fellow Taoists, take a good look. This is the skeleton of the divine concubine of the Ruins Emperor. She was a beauty back then. She won't be auctioned, but you can visit and take photos with her. Only 10 crystals. Cheap, small profits but quick turnover." They clamored and created a huge commotion. Their voices reverberated through the clouds, causing the area to become restless. Wrong. A divine concubine is a divine concubine. After all, she's just a skeleton, not a beauty. That's the only price she's worth. Even Yin Zhongzi, who had always been cold and taciturn, joined in. His poisonous tongue began to wantonly humiliate the imperial family of the Ruins of Immortality. The entire place was dead silent. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe what they were seeing. These bandits were simply too crazy and too arrogant. Even a mouse dared to rape a cat. They had completely forgotten who they were. Some clamored to slay the Inferno Divine Emperor, while others wanted to sell his father's golden underwear. Others wanted him to offer up his concubines and daughters. There were even those who profaned the skeletons of the Ruins Emperor's divine concubine. This was a great provocation. It could be said that the imperial family of the Ruins of Immortality was trampled to the ground, ruthlessly trampled on. Kong Teichu, 7 great bandits, you're courting death. Little rat, this king will kill you first. Before the Inferno God King could move, a God King stepped out of the bronze chariot and approached Tian Shu. His eyes were like lightning and filled with murderous intent. He was one of the younger brothers of the Inferno Divine Emperor. He had once made unparalleled achievements in battle, and was his right-hand man. Now that he had awakened because of this battle, he had the cultivation of the early stage of the soul formation realm. He was brave and powerful. Now seeing how arrogant the bandits were, especially when the remains of the divine concubine were being desecrated, he was utterly furious. Come on. Fight with me. I'll slaughter you into dregs. Ah. Tian Shu was as timid as a mouse, but he was fearless after drinking. He waved a long knife and jumped up and down, roaring and provoking all kinds of people. No one could stop him. Demon-slaying array. The God King attacked without hesitation. He spat out 36 bronze lamps from his mouth, which spread out like a fan in the sky. The flames in the wick of the lamps shot straight into the sky like a green willow. The wisp, burning towards Tian Shu. Each bronze lamp was made with the essence of fire, and there were different types of flames. They were a kind of demon refining flame, which was a kind of earth flame. It was famous for its power, and was used to kill demons. That's God King Ghostly Flame. I didn't expect him to come in person. He's the right-hand man of Divine Emperor Lai Hua. He's always been close to him. This time, he's here to help his brother. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. That was definitely a superior-grade Taoist artifact, and it was especially used to suppress demons. Little Rat was in danger. Tianshu stepped back. Jiang Tian yelled and took a step forward. Without saying a word, he waved his finger and pointed. Whoosh. Suddenly, the dazzling golden light screen cracked the void. It was as if an ancient god had split open the chaos and divided yin and yang as it slashed through. Clang. The 36 bronze lamps in front of him were directly split into two halves from the middle, as easily as cutting water with a knife. Then they exploded one after another, and huge mushroom clouds of flames rose into the air. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Waves of energy surged. The first move was a battle between Divine Transformation Realm cultivators. The scene was shocking. Kong Taechu, you're really something, but you may not be able to defeat me. God King Ghostly Flame was shocked, but the next moment he was furious. He rushed forward dozens of miles with high fighting spirit. His divine treasures rumbled, and the gods roared. Balls of lush green fire laws brought with them a dense ghost chi, forming a flaming screen that had a radius of 10 miles. It suppressed towards Jiang Tian. This kind of attack could not only burn the body, but also the divine soul. Once the divine soul was contaminated by the ghostly flame, even if it didn't die, it would become a walking corpse. It would be very miserable. Alas, I want to kill Divine Emperor Lai Hua. You're also a piece of trash. Why do you have to jump out and court death? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Jiang Tian sighed and suddenly stepped forward. He used the Kuan Peng Divine Law and split the space. His speed was unparalleled in the world. Jiang Tian's figure turned into a stream of light in the shape of a Kuan Peng and broke through the ghostly flame curtain in an instant, easily tearing apart the vast laws. Jiang Tian came in front of God King Ghostly Flame and punched his chest without saying anything. This, God King Ghostly Flame exclaimed. He wanted to block it, but it was too late. Jiang Tian's fist hit his chest heavily. Poof. Blood splattered in the sky. God King Ghostly Flame activated more than a dozen defensive Dao artifacts in succession. His armor shone brightly and he continuously used secret arts, but they couldn't stop Jiang Tian's fist. They were like paper and were broken again and again. In the end, all of them were smashed into pieces. Crack. A bloody hole appeared in God King Ghostly Flame's chest. Crystal clear bones and internal organs with green fire flew out. Then, the green jade-like divine treasures were also smashed by the punch. Under the crowd's incredulous gazes and terrifying cries of alarm, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Jiang Tian stretched out his hand and directly grabbed his deity. He squeezed it hard and the deity screamed and shattered in a second. The next moment, Jiang Tian's arm shook. Divine King Deep Flame could no longer support his body and exploded into a pile of meat paste. His sparkling remains scattered across the sky. Everyone was silent. They were so frightened that their legs turned to jelly and they couldn't believe it. Then there was an uproar. Many cultivators from Grotto Heavens, sects and families took a few steps back in fear. A clan brother of the Inferno Godly Emperor, a trusted subordinate, was actually killed. More importantly, it happened right in front of Divine Emperor Lai Hua. This was simply too shocking and unbelievable. Kong Taechu is indeed terrifying. He used Dharma laws just now, but when he killed God King Ghostly Flame, he only used his body. The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven revealed a look of surprise as he communicated with his fellow cultivators with his divine sense. Everyone was shocked. What exactly was Kong Taechu's body made of? It could break the Dharma laws and so many Dao artifacts. It was simply terrifying. More importantly, at the nascent soul level, the body was only the foundation. The more powerful were the nascent soul and Dharma laws. If Kong Taechu used them, how powerful would he be? Why didn't Divine Emperor Lai Hua attack? Zhao Shanhe asked in confusion. It's not that he doesn't want to attack, but Kong Taechu is too fast and it's too late. Besides, if the Divine Emperor attacks in close combat, Ghostly Flame will also be affected. A living fossil analyzed with fear in his eyes. Looks like we underestimated Kong Taechu's strength. One of the sect masters commented with rapt attention. The battle between him and Divine Emperor Lai Hua will definitely be a shocking battle. It won't be one-sided. It'll be a big scene. Some people sighed with emotion, and there was actually a bit of anticipation. Kang Taechu is too powerful. He seems to be at least 10 times stronger than when he was in the Steel Forest. As for Song Baoxin, Cheng Aojuan, Su Chongqing and the other disciples of the academy, they were dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Even Grand Chancellor Ban Shan revealed a horrified expression, as if he was facing a great enemy. His right hand that was holding onto the huge iron hammer tightened once more. Maybe the Taichu Heavenly Emperor can win this battle. I hope so. Xian Nu and Sun Xiao, the two Sir Gods from the Water Moon Cave Heaven, looked at each other with anticipation. You're too weak. Come on, come and kill me if you have the guts. Lai Hua, come here and I'll kill you. My celestial emperor is here and he'll turn you into ashes immediately. Behind Jiang Tian and the assassins of the big bandits, Tian Shu's saliva was flying all over the place. The smell of alcohol filled the air, and he was shouting and yelling. He staggered and waved a strange saber, jumping up and down like a gopher. He was weak, but once he drank he forgot who he was, which made everyone feel helpless. But this also boosted their morale. The assassins of the big bandits all cheered. Fu Heishui cursed. Ha ha ha, father-in-law Lai Hua, where's your daughter? Why don't you give her to me? I'm thirsty for her. Brother, something's not right. He wants to give his wife to me. What should you call me? Don't tell me you're going to call me stepfather? Fu Huiren said with a troubled expression. Ying Long put on the golden underwear and the crimson cloak. He looked like Superman and said angrily, Lai Hua Shenhuang, you're too stingy. Since you don't want my underwear, I'll wear it myself. I hereby announce that this item is not being auctioned. The bronze chariot roared. Lai Hua Shenhuang was furious. He stepped forward and faced Jiang Tian. There was nothing to say. This battle was unavoidable. Kang Taechu, you traitor. I'll kill you and use your blood to pay tribute to the spirits of the royal family. I'll remove your name from the world. Lai Hua Shenhuang was furious. Jiang Tian and the big bandits had wreaked havoc in the ruins of immortality and killed the royal family. They were the #1 enemies in the ruins of immortality. Especially today, Jiang Tian and the others had heartlessly teased him, showing off the golden underwear, dancing with the corpse, humiliating him in every possible way, causing the dignity of the royal family to fall to the ground. This caused his killing intent to soar to the sky, and he was unable to suppress it at all. Divine Princess, I'll send your children to you. I've just sent Deep Flame. Now I'll send Lai Hua too. Jiang Tian grabbed the remains of the Divine Princess and patted her cheek. Then he slapped her so hard that her skull spun and flew out like a basketball. Rest in peace. Jiang Tian casually tossed the remains away and took a step forward. Like a Kuan-Peng soaring through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, he charged towards the Inferno Godly Emperor. Chapter 1600. Kang Taechu, you are too arrogant. This is the skeleton of the Ruins Emperor's divine consort. Are you courting death? This is treason. This is the greatest provocation to our Ruins Emperor's lineage. Today, he must be killed to show the world that the Ruins Emperor's lineage is not to be insulted. The Ruins of Immortality royalty is supreme. It is not to be blasphemed. Kill him. Grind his bones to dust and extract his soul. Only by burning it in a fiendish fire for 10,000 years can we vent our hatred. Many royalty clamored as their hatred surged. They gnashed their teeth, yearning to charge forward and fight Jiang Tian, tearing Jiang Tian to pieces. The divine consort skeleton was their ancestor. But how could they tolerate having her head sent flying by Jiang Tian's slap? It was a smack to their faces. This was intolerable to the prideful and arrogant people who believed themselves to be superior to others. Kang Taechu, you must have had enough of living. Divine Emperor Inferno roared as his deep eyes burned with flames of fury. His hair flared in anger as he took a step forward. 2 flaming wheels rose beneath his feet, allowing him to move as fast as lightning as he charged at Jiang Tian. Divine Emperor Inferno has reigned supreme for 10,000 years. His name has shaken the ruins of immortality. Kang Taechu is no match for him. Kang Taechu, no matter how strong you are only an ant compared to Divine Emperor Inferno. Kong Taechu, your life is coming to an end. How dare you provoke Divine Emperor Inferno? That is a violation of the heavens. The Divine Emperor will trample you beneath his feet like a dog. The royalty and guards cheered in excitement. Banners filled the sky as war drums shook the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Jiang Tian used the Kuan-Peng's extreme speed, while Divine Emperor Inferno used the attainment formula of the Ruins Emperor's 9 heavens art. Both of them were movement techniques that were best at speed. They far exceeded Ghost Wolf and Yin Zhongzi's void-tearing art. They were truly evenly matched. Qi. Under the extreme speed of the two, the distance of more than 100 miles was covered in the blink of an eye. The two had already collided in the blink of an eye. No one saw the collision this time clearly, but there were great Dao sounds that sounded extremely mysterious and complex. It was like the sound of Buddhist chanting, like the evening drum and morning bell, and like the vast celestial sound that came down from the 9 heavens. It was solemn, vast, marvelous, and profound. This is the sound of the great Tao. The moment the two of them attacked, it was a collision of the great Tao level. Retreat. Children, activate the protective formation. Many heavenly grotto heavens sect masters cried out in alarm. Their expressions changed drastically, because they knew how terrifying this collision was. Rumble. The void collapsed, and all directions were annihilated. This was a type of great destruction. Cracks appeared in the void, intertwining with the laws and flames. Astral winds howled, destroying everything. The terrifying fluctuations were like hundreds of nuclear weapons exploding at the same time. The space crack could even be called an abyss. It extended for 10 miles. Wherever it passed, mountains collapsed and the earth sank. There were even meteors with a radius of 1 mile that suddenly fell from the sky, leaving long trails of light behind them. They pierced through the mountain peaks and ignited flames that soared into the sky. The collision between the two of them had actually affected the outer space. So powerful. Many cultivators who had activated the formation were bleeding from their ears and on the verge of collapse. Even the soul formation overlords didn't dare to be careless and retreated one after another. This was only the first attack between the two of them. Neither of them used their full strength. It was just a kind of contact and testing. It was far from reaching the climax. But it was already so terrifying. No one could predict what kind of terrifying scene would occur later. Kong Taechu, you are indeed very powerful. No wonder you dare to provoke the empire of the immortal ruins. But this will be your end. In my eyes, you'll always be an ant from a peripheral planet. You're not worthy of my attention. On the battlefield, Divine Emperor Lai Ho retreated to the ancient chariot and stood proudly. He wasn't injured. His eyes were cold, but there were flames lingering around them. His black hair fluttered in the wind, his armor was bright and his robe was blood red. His broad chest and burly figure gave people a sense of oppression. This was the majesty of an emperor. He was high and mighty, with monstrous power and peerless energy. Haha, I'm an ant? However, this ant killed your descendants and killed your brothers. Jiang Tian stood with his hands behind his back and a mocking expression on his face. The black-clothed Jiang Tian's eyes were deep like the stars in the sky. His expression was indifferent, giving people a feeling that he was at ease. He was very elegant and otherworldly, as if he was an immortal that didn't belong to the mortal world. In the eyes of ordinary people, Jiang Tian seemed to be a bit weaker than Divine Emperor Lai Hua. It was like the relationship between a god and a mortal, a king and a subject. But some sect masters of Grotto Heavens found that Jiang Tian's every breath and movement seemed to be part of the Dharma laws and the Grand Tao. That kind of connection was extremely close. Jiang Tian said in a lukewarm tone. And what can you do to me? Aren't we just watching with our eyes wide open, unable to do anything about it? Kong Taechu, you've successfully angered me. Divine Emperor Lai Ho was furious and his eyes were full of hatred. He grabbed the handle of the blade on his back with his right hand and pulled it out inch by inch. Every inch of this flaming mystic saber would shoot out thousands of beams of saint light and divine light. It was as if a sun had risen, and it was dazzling. At the same time, there was a burning power like a volcanic eruption in all directions. The rolling heat waves were too terrifying. In the blink of an eye, all the trees within a 100-mile radius were burnt to ashes. In the second blink of an eye, The mountain range within a 10-mile radius turned into a flood of lava. The 1,000-foot mountains collapsed like melted wax. The Soul Formation overlords in the distance were all startled and couldn't help but step back. Apart from the terrifying heat waves, they also felt a terrifying murderous intent. This was a terrifying mentality that said, "If I can't do it, who can do it?" It was as if he was the master of this world, and everything was under his control. This Inferno Blade is just a name we're used to calling it. Its real name is the Emperor Inferno Tribulation Blade. An expert at the level of a living fossil stared at the saber. His face was full of respect, and his eyes were fixed on the saber as he said word by word, "It's the Emperor Inferno Tribulation Blade. I heard that the old Ruins Emperor gave birth to the Heavenly Fire Tribulation when he went through the Soul Formation Tribulation. However, His Majesty, the old Ruins Emperor, was a man of great talent and vision. He used the 9 heavens astral fire to refine the saber and condensed a portion of his Tao fruit as a spirit-severing cultivator. This blade is too powerful. It's almost a sacred weapon. Killing soul formation cultivators is as easy as killing chickens." Many cultivators from the ruins of deity exclaimed with admiration in their eyes. An extremely scorching aura that seemed to be able to burn everything spread out. Every time the Emperor's blazing fire calamity saber rose an inch, thousands of divine might would rush out, causing the distant mountains to melt, the earth to crack, and the water vapor and smoke to distort the void. Furthermore, this was merely the aftermath of the natural explosion before it was activated. In the end, there was an explosion. The blade was completely in the hands of the Inferno Divine Emperor. He stood on the ancient chariot and slashed towards Jiang Tian. I heard that you have a peerless sword called the Heaven Extinguishing Sword. It's used by Jun Zhongli, the loser of the previous dynasty. Take it out." At that moment, the Inferno Divine Emperor was full of confidence and roared loudly. How could Kong Teichu fight with such a blade in hand? He didn't have enough power. "You think you're qualified to make me use the Heaven Extinguishing Sword?" That sword was prepared for the Emperor of the Ruins. Jiang Tian snickered. He reached out his right hand and slapped. He had resisted the peerless attack of the Inferno Divine Emperor with his body. Nobody had thought that such a situation would happen. Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator, an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. However, the Inferno Divine Emperor was a soul formation cultivator with a powerful Tao artifact, and Jiang Tian could resist it with his body? The world was turning upside down. Jiang Tian didn't use any divine powers or Dharma laws. He just charged forward and fought in close combat with his body. Jiang Tian's punches and kicks were extremely simple. There was nothing fancy about them, but his power and speed were so fast that they were unparalleled in the world. He was on par with the Inferno Divine Emperor, who was holding a supreme Tao artifact. Boom! Jiang Tian threw a punch, and the world was turned upside down. All kinds of light flashed, and the ground exploded. The mountains collapsed and the sky was torn apart. "Kill!" The Inferno Divine Emperor shouted anxiously. The Tribulation Saber contained the power of the Soul Formation Fire Tribulation. It was as if a Soul Formation cultivator was going through a tribulation. The Dharma laws of fire rumbled, and it could easily destroy 10 Soul Formation cultivators. And yet, it couldn't even leave a white mark on Jiang Tian's body. Whoosh! As the Inferno Divine Emperor slashed, phoenixes, white tigers and Xianwu, all kinds of phenomena swooped down like gods. Those were the heavenly fire tribulation that the Ruins Emperor had encountered when he was a soul formation cultivator. He had gathered them with his divine power and Dharma power, and refined them into the arcane saber. Normal soul formation cultivators wouldn't be able to withstand it for more than a second. Break! Jiang Tian's eyes were glittering. He shot into the sky like a dragon and punched the sky. The Kuan-Peng quickly created a crack in the dimension. At that moment, his body was like a heavenly saber, cutting through the world like a torpedo and rampaging like a tiger in a flock of sheep. He tore apart the fire phenomena, but not a single strand of his hair was burned. That was the power of the chaotic divine body. Chaos was the original substance that created the world and gave birth to everything. The chaotic divine body was like a King Kong to a rope when compared to the Dharma laws of a normal soul formation cultivator. Even if the King Kong was just a baby, it couldn't be strangled to death by a rope. No matter how thick it would be useless. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Tian had arrived in front of the Inferno Divine Emperor. He leaned back and punched the Emperor Fire Tribulation Saber. Clang! With one punch, a small part of the Emperor's blazing Fire Tribulation Saber shattered. The blazing godly Emperor's arm was instantly shaken to the point where divine blood flowed out. Besides, the fragments of the Tribulation Saber shot out, and a few of them cut into the Inferno Divine Emperor's arm, burning with flames. The temperature was terrifying. Everyone was shocked. Jiang Tian had destroyed a supreme Dao artifact with one punch. He wasn't a human cultivator. He was more like a deity in heaven. Poof! The Inferno Divine Emperor was very decisive. He raised the broken saber and slashed down. His blood was surrounded by flames as he cut off his right arm. Divine Emperor! At that moment, countless members of the royal family yelled. Many of the divine generals and divine guards were also shocked. They had just been saying that Jiang Tian was no match for the Inferno Divine Emperor. They had never thought that Jiang Tian would be able to shake the heavenly saber with his body and break one of the Inferno Divine Emperor's arms in the second round. Chapter 1601. On the other side, Jiang Tian didn't press the attack after shattering the Blade of Calamity. Instead, he flew backward and looked at Divine Emperor Lai Ho mockingly. Yes, mockery. At this moment, the feeling that Jiang Tian gave people was like an old cat that was toying with a mouse in the palm of its hand. He was extremely confident and fearless. Even if I give you a chance, you still won't be able to escape. Kong Teichu, how dare you hurt me? With a loud roar, Divine Emperor Lai Ho rode his chariot and retreated rapidly. He did not dare to fight Jiang Tian in close quarters. His eyes were filled with dread and fear. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators on the 1,000-mile battlefield were all silent. They were deeply shocked. No one had expected this outcome. Divine Emperor Lai Hua, whose name had been passed down through the ages and was unbeatable in the future, had lost an arm? Even the Blade of Calamity, which contained the tribulation of heavenly fire, and a trace of the old ruins Emperor's Dao fruit, had been destroyed. Countless members of the royal family, divine generals, and divine guards were shocked and panicked, but they couldn't make a sound. It was so shocking that they had lost the ability to speak. All they could do was stare in shock. Kong Teichu was too strong. They had thought of him as an ant and a clown at first, then as a demon, a murderer, a bandit and a thief. In short, he was nothing to be proud of, but he had broken their divine emperor's arm. The royal family and nobles had been full of confidence and arrogance, thinking that Jiang Tian would end up like the divine generals of the ancient heavenly court. They thought that he was just a small loach that couldn't cause any big waves. And yet, this had happened. Divine Emperor Lai Hua, who was the direct descendant of the old ruins emperor, and claimed to be on par with the three unparalleled giants, had suffered a great loss. Many members of the royal family and nobles felt their faces burn. It's hard to predict who will win this battle. A person who looked like a living fossil stared at Jiang Tian with a strange light in his eyes. If we go up against Kong Teichu, I'm afraid our chances of winning are slim. This kid is really evil. He's truly invincible. That's right. As of now, he hasn't used the power of the nascent soul or his dharmic powers. He's only using his physical body. Several heavenly grotto sect masters with extremely high status looked at each other in dismay. They could see the fear and vigilance on each other's faces. Heavens, he actually... How is this possible? As for Song Baoxin, Cheng Aojuan, and the other disciples of the academy, they were already dumbfounded and frightened. When the news of Jiang Tian first spread to the ruins of immortality, these academy disciples only regarded Jiang Tian as a bandit. They all had the idea of killing Jiang Tian to establish their prestige. They thought that Jiang Tian was just a stepping stone for them to improve their cultivation, and to be recognized by the dynasty of the ruins of immortality. But at this moment, seeing Jiang Tian suppressing the Inferno Godly Emperor, they felt as if they were looking up at a high mountain, like an ant at the foot of Mount Tai. They felt that Jiang Tian was unreachable, and could never be surpassed. This guy is extremely lucky and his cultivation speed is extremely fast. He's at least 10 times stronger than in the Steel Forest Forbidden Grounds. Ban Shan's forehead was covered with sweat. He was very worried. If he were to fight against Jiang Tian now, he had no confidence at all. Crack, crack, crack. Divine Emperor Lai Hua's right arm trembled and his bones cracked. He was performing the swordsman's secret art of the 9 heavenly arts. But his attainment and understanding of this art were 10 times deeper than Divine Emperor Hanshi's. The Dharma laws of fire from all directions surged into his broken arm, and it was restored to perfect condition in a blink. Divine Emperor, be careful. Many members of the royal family warned with worried eyes. If it weren't for the fact that they were in public, they would probably persuade Divine Emperor Lai Hua to stop the battle and order the 6 grotto heavens and the army to besiege Kong Techu. They didn't believe that they couldn't kill this villain. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was furious. He had never suffered such a great loss since the day he was born. His face was cold, but his eyes were burning with anger, as if they could burn thousands of worlds. He was invincible when he fought in the ruins of immortality, and even suppressed the 7 great bandits. But now he was severely injured. Kill. Divine Emperor Lai Hua was furious. He put his sword back into its sheath and made a gesture with both hands. He pressed on his forehead and suddenly opened a vertical eye. The flame in the vertical eye flickered, and a huge fusang tree appeared in front of it. Its leaves were like gold essence, and they made clanging sounds. 9 golden crows flew out from the branches, and they were like 9 suns that flickered in the sky. Boom! The 9 golden divine birds were surrounded by flames and burned everything. Even the bronze chariot under Divine Emperor Lai Hua's feet seemed to be melting. All kinds of law threads in the world were torn apart, and the rules collapsed and were destroyed. Sun Sutra. Someone exclaimed, recognizing this technique. This was a supreme technique that was on par with the 9 great heavenly techniques of the ruins Emperor Palace. Riding a starry sky Dharma artifact, one could get infinitely close to a star and intercept the true sunfire precepts and great Tao fragments. By sacrificing them into one's body and God, one could produce true sunfire. It was said that Divine Emperor Lai Hua had the help of the ruins Emperor Palace, Teacher, and Sky Palace to cultivate this technique back then. He actually cultivated true sunfire. Many people were shocked. What kind of power could surpass the flames of a star? Everything in the world was nourished by it to grow. Of course, if one got close, he could also destroy everything. In fact, it was not wrong for them to worship such a technique. Techniques that used the power of yin and yang were known as the Mother Sutra Festival, even in the Central Galaxy. It had a special meaning, and many cultivators were researching and pursuing it. Jiang Taichu, I'd like to see how you're going to resist this time. I will definitely kill you. There is no doubt about it. Divine Emperor Lai Hua's face was cold as steel. His eyes were filled with anger and hatred, but they were brimming with unparalleled confidence. The Fusang Divine Tree stood tall, supporting the heavens and the earth. It was very powerful, comparable to the Golden Crow ancient emperor's Dharma characteristics that Jiang Tian had encountered in the ancient demon abyss. Resplendent, blazing, tyrannical. Flames that contained the power of laws tore apart the firmament and collapsed the void. They seemed to be able to refine the stars and shatter the moon as they came crashing down on Jiang Tian. There were also 9 golden crows that accelerated rapidly, turning into flaming arrows that pierced towards Jiang Tian. Perhaps Divine Emperor Lai Hua's Sun Sutra had gained a lot of inspiration from the Golden Crow ancient emperor's technique. After all, the Golden Crow ancient emperor's lineage was the guardian of the sun. They lived on a star and were very heaven-defying. Idiot. Jiang Tian only snorted softly. He used the same move again, charging forward. He used his powerful body to break through many phenomenons, sending the golden crows flying and breaking the Fusang Divine Tree. Under the incredulous gaze of the crowd and Divine Emperor Lai Hua's exclamation, Jiang Tian instantly rushed above Divine Emperor Lai Hua and slammed down with his palm. Bam! The palm landed on Divine Emperor Lai Hua's head. There was no spiritual power or quintessential essence. It was purely physical strength, but it tore through the void, causing Yuan Qi to fluctuate. Pa! Half of Divine Emperor Lai Hua's head exploded. The ancient bronze chariot fell to the ground. No, to be precise, it was like a cannonball that was shot towards the ground. Together with Divine Emperor Lai Hua, They blasted a huge pit hundreds of meters deep in the ground. Huge cracks spread out in all directions. The ancient bronze chariot fell apart instantly. Countless Dao patterns and array patterns were destroyed, turning it into a pile of scrap metal. As for Divine Emperor Lai Hua, he vomited blood. His divine treasures trembled, and his god wailed mournfully. He could not get up for a long time. Jiang Tian had actually used his physical body to severely injure his deity with a single palm strike. This time, everyone was dumbfounded. They could not believe it. The sect masters of the grotto heavens all trembled. Their faces were full of horror, especially the descendants of the royal family and nobles. They looked as if they had lost their parents. Their faces were pale and dejected. When Jiang Tian had shattered the emperor's fiery tribulation saber and destroyed one of Divine Emperor Lai Hua's limbs, some of the cultivators were still delusional or comforting themselves. They thought that Jiang Tian was just lucky and that Divine Emperor Lai Hua was not cautious or did not use his full strength, etc. But this time, they had no reason to comfort themselves. They had to admit that Jiang Tian was suppressing Divine Emperor Lai Hua. He had completely occupied the upper hand. No. Kong Techu, you are no match for me. However, after only 3 seconds, Divine Emperor Lai Hua used the heavenly art of He to repair his body. He roared to the sky and turned into a flame, shooting into the sky. He stood face to face with Jiang Tian. His face was full of humiliation, resentment, and hatred. He took out a magic treasure. When this magic treasure appeared, everyone was shocked. I can't believe this treasure has appeared. How can Kong Techu resist it? Many sect masters of the grotto heavens in the ruins of immortality narrowed their eyes. They looked hopeful and excited. Chapter 1602. Furnace of Myriad Tao. Even the sect masters of the grotto heavens spat out the words with great difficulty. They were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out. Divine Emperor Lai Hua took out an ancient bronze cauldron. The cauldron instantly became 1,000 feet wide, with 3 legs and 2 handles. It was simple and majestic, carved with many inexplicable patterns, such as the sun, moon, stars, flowers, birds, insects, fish, birds, beasts, and even mountains and palaces in the ruins of immortality. Isn't this an ordinary cauldron weapon? Song Baoxin was puzzled. He didn't know why so many sect masters of the grotto heavens were so shocked. No. This is the furnace of myriad Tao. After the headmaster created the Dian Law, he led many soul formation grand cultivators to cut off countless laws and great Daos to create this supreme Taoist artifact. The Academy's Grand Chancellor, Ban Shan, stared at the ancient cauldron with sparkling eyes. He wished he could take it for himself. One had to know that he was one of the top blacksmiths in the ruins of immortality. Even so, this treasure still made his heart burn with desire. So it's that treasure. The headmaster made it himself. Song Baoxin, Cheng Aojuan, Su Chongqing, and other disciples of the academy were full of admiration, fascination, and shock, as if they were seeing the headmaster. If the headmaster hadn't been born, the ruins of immortality would have been like a long night. The headmaster was a magnificent and open-minded person. He was a saint that appeared once every 5,000 years in the ruins of immortality. When it came to selecting talents and training disciples, the headmaster was open-minded and accepted all kinds of people. He adhered to the idea that everyone could be a talent without discrimination. He brought out countless talents from the 2nd and 3rd level dimensions, or the bottom level of the ruins of immortality. In terms of Taoism, the headmaster created the Dian Law, which was an unparalleled divine power. With this cultivation method, cultivators could theoretically control several dozens, or even hundreds of laws, and their strength would reach the limit. Legend had it that after the headmaster created this cultivation method, he traveled the famous mountains and rivers of the ruins of immortality for 1,000 years. He observed the vicissitudes of life and tasted the smoke and fire of the mortal world. With great Dharma power and divine power, he finally cut off countless great Daos from the ruins of immortality and merged them into the furnace of myriad Tao. It could be said that this bronze cauldron was the crystallization of the headmaster's 1,000 years of cultivation. It was also the most remarkable achievement of the Dian Dao Law. As soon as this cauldron appeared, it was like a key that opened the door to all mysteries. Countless great Daos in the ruins of immortality were immediately activated. Even if it was only a part of it, it was still shocking enough. One had to know that the power of a vast cultivation star was simply immeasurable. No matter how strong the soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality were, they could not surpass the world of the ruins of immortality. Moreover, this world had given birth to more than thousands of soul formation cultivators. Suppress. The moment the Inferno God King took out this treasure, his aura increased by 100 times. His body was surrounded by flames, and his eyes emitted a bright light. It was as if a real god had descended to the mortal world, overlooking the myriad worlds. His aura was extremely powerful. The 10,000 Dao furnace cauldron rushed towards Jiang Tian. In an instant, the entire ruins of immortality seemed to have awakened. All kinds of essence qi surged towards the cauldron, and were mobilized, turning into laws. The spiritual qi of plants, the essence of the scorching sun, the faint light of the stars, and even the death qi of the corpses and the miasma of the swamp all poured down. The Inferno God King was forced to retreat. Unable to bear it, he finally used this peerless Taoist treasure to launch an extreme attack. This was the crystallization of the headmaster's cultivation for half of his life. It was 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than the fruit of Tao of an ordinary soul formation cultivator. Its divine power was terrifying and nothing could resist it. Once it was used, it would definitely shake the world. In the ruins of immortality, which was millions of miles wide, all the spiritual bodies and forces were transformed into laws. They formed invisible lines that traversed the void. There were so many forces and primordial qi in this world. If they were all summoned and turned into attacks, there would be more than 10,000 of them. Instantly, Jiang Tian's surroundings were filled with dense nets, fragments, and ribbons of various colors. 10,000 spirits transformed into the Tao, enveloping over like many huge nets, covering the sky and earth. It made Jiang Tian feel as if he was placed in a furnace and would be refined. My lord, be careful. At this time, even the Green Dragon King, Tu Fei, and Niu Duotian were frightened. Tian Shu was so scared that his wine turned into cold sweat and his legs trembled. Bai Muxue made a series of hand seals, trying to break the attack of this Dharma treasure, but she found that it was impossible. This was probably the most invincible art of slaughter beneath the old ruins emperor, and the 3 unparalleled heavyweights. It transformed everything in the world into Tao laws, and used the myriad Tao cauldron as a medium to become one with this world, borrowing all the power and laws of this world for my use. Jiang Tian shouted and waved his fingers. 100-meter-long sword formed by the gung-metal divine law slashed on the giant nets of laws. Bang! That sound was like a blunt knife cutting into cowhide. Everyone thought that the peak attack of the two would be like a meteorite crashing into a continent. Unexpectedly, there wasn't much of a commotion. In the next moment, the gung-metal divine law sword dispersed and turned into golden sage runes. At this time, the 10,000 Tao furnace's attack was like a giant net, but it was still a net with many gaps. Many gung-metal divine law runes flowed out of the holes in the net like a flood, and then condensed into a sword dozens of miles away, slashing toward the divine emperor Lai Hua. Seeing this, the divine emperor Lai Hua's face was as cold as steel, and his cold eyes showed some admiration. You would rather sacrifice 1,000 of your own to injure 800 of your enemy, as expected of a hero of a generation. Although he praised, his movements were not slow at all. He used the Xing heavenly technique and flew up and down like a meteor to dodge the sword. Tihe, tieste, tiske, tiese, tisi. Blood dyed the sky red as the gung-metal divine law sword beheaded a few royals before the sword stopped. The group of royals who were originally arrogant were scared out of their wits and fled like frightened birds, not daring to get close. Kong Techu, how dare you bully my juniors? Seeing this, the divine emperor Lai Hua was enraged and roared loudly. Kong Techu was too ruthless and could be called the god of death. The royals who had just died were all outstanding and many of them were nascent soul realm cultivators. Why didn't you run and let me kill you? I'm not interested in these small fries. After all, I used my divine power. How can I leave empty-handed? Jiang Tian said coldly as if ignoring the 10,000 Dao net that was about to form. He clenched his fist and shouted. Slash again. A void crack dozens of miles long appeared between heaven and earth, and countless essence chi shot into the sky like smoke signals. The gung metal divine law sword formed again, and it was dozens of meters long. Obviously, the gung metal divine law sword had used up a lot of Jiang Tian's divine power. Under the pursuit of the gung metal divine law sword, the divine emperor Lai Hua fled pathetically, and even had to break the void crack to escape. He could feel the terror of the flashing golden Dharma. Its power was no less than ordinary great Tao and could severely injure him. 3rd/, 4th/, 5th/. Jiang Tian launched tens of sword attacks in a row, puncturing countless holes in the cave that had a radius of hundreds, even thousands of miles. The cave was like a hornet's nest, and cracks were everywhere. The Inferno Godly Emperor used the attainment formula, and became the fierce running formula. He escaped from the Gungjin long sword dozens of times by a hair's breadth, but his divine treasures were still severely damaged twice. Just as his energy was getting weaker and weaker, and he was only a few attacks away from being killed, the Divine Emperor Lai Hua suddenly stopped. Divine Emperor Lai Hua suddenly stood still and stopped dodging. He used the swordsman formula to repair his body and divine treasures while laughing. Kong Teichu wanted to kill me before the furnace of myriad Tao closed, but now. Hearing this, many soul formation grand cultivators scanned with their immortal will, or opened their heavenly eyes to observe carefully. They were shocked to see. Tens of thousands of law threads formed a giant net that had already completely closed. It was like a bird cage, and Jiang Tian was a bird in this bird cage. In other words, the furnace of myriad Tao was a large furnace and Jiang Tian was the only firewood in the furnace. Gather! The Divine Emperor Lai Hua shouted as he was pleased to get his revenge. Thousands of great Daos rumbled and trembled. They shrank inward, and the multicolored laws became more and more powerful. The sect masters of the grotto heavens, the masters of the families and the living fossils at the soul formation realm all felt that once the giant net closed into the furnace, whether it was the nine heavens deity or the divine fetus of the saints, they would be melted into pieces in an instant. Chapter 1603. This cauldron was the crystallization of the headmaster's 1,000-year-old Tao fruit. It was also the trump card of the Divine Emperor Lai Hua. It could even be said that this cauldron was not prepared for Jiang Tian at all, but for the peerless powerhouse from the extraterritorial region. But now, Jiang Tian had become the biggest threat to the empire of the ruins of immortality. The Divine Emperor Lai Hua did not disgrace the name of the cauldron by using it now. Alas! Facing the giant net that was gradually compressing and trembling with all kinds of Dharma laws, Jiang Tian let out a soft sigh and dispersed the Gungjin Divine Rule sword that had been condensed in midair. The Divine Rule talisman seemed to be cast in gold. It clanged and fell like the fragments of fireworks. Jiang Tian's hands hung down. He stood in the void with his black robe fluttering in the wind. It seemed that he had no choice but to give up resistance. Kong Teichu, you are indeed the most talented cultivator in the history of the ruins of immortality. Even the ancient sages from 10,000 years ago might not be as talented as you. At your age, they can't even be compared to you. The Divine Emperor Lai Hua praised, but his face was extremely cold. His blazing eyes were full of murderous intent. He made a series of gestures with both hands to activate the great cauldron. With the help of the cauldron, he activated the power of half of the ruins of immortality, and crazily attacked Jiang Tian without any mercy. At his level of cultivation, he'd experienced the internal strife of the imperial family, and there were no battles of life and death. He'd galloped through the battlefield, so his disposition was extremely experienced and ruthless. He naturally understood the principle that a lion had to use its full strength even when hunting a rabbit, so how could he allow himself to be merciful in the slightest? What a pity! If we wait another 100 years, the Divine Emperor Lai Hua will definitely lose. Divine Emperor Sun Xiao shook his head and sighed. Once Kong Teichu's soul is searched, the Water Moon heavenly abode will immediately disband and the disciples will be dismissed. Divine Emperor Xiannu was already thinking of a way out. If Jiang Tian was defeated, and the alliance between the Water Moon heavenly abode and Jiang Tian was exposed, the empire of the ruins of immortality would definitely take revenge and purge. That would be a disaster. Alas, could it be that this kid doesn't know that our ruins of immortality is a place where all rivers flow into the sea? If he surrenders, he can at least be a divine general. Some heavenly grotto heavens headmasters didn't understand, and shook their heads regretfully. The sect masters of the grotto heavens, the lords of the aristocratic families, and even the nobles and officials felt regretful. Kong Techu's talent was peerless, so why did he have to become enemies with the ruins of immortality? Wouldn't it have been better for him to just be a servant? Kong Techu is about to die. There should be a lot of treasures in that Zwang peak. Song Baoxin rubbed his palms together, revealing a greedy expression. What? I can't break it. This is too scary. Niu Duotian, the Green Flood Dragon King, Tu Fei Yunzhongzi, and the other bandits rushed towards the net and launched attacks in an attempt to save Jiang Tian. However, no matter what method they used, it was useless. They were even shaken out by the dense laws, and were sent flying dozens of miles away, suffering heavy injuries. In an instant, the group of heroes' eyes were filled with worry and despair. They felt a chill from head to toe. The great cauldron of myriad Tao affected the laws and great Tao of the ruins of immortality, which was equivalent to gathering the power of this world. It was so terrifying that it was almost strange. Who could resist using an entire world to suppress it? My lord. Seeing that the huge net had already closed, and it was like a multicolored crystalline cocoon that surrounded Jiang Tian within it, Jiang Tian's heart trembled. Long Shengnan and Bai Muxia both cried out in shock. Tears rolled down their faces, and their hair flew in the wind. Their beautiful faces were pale, filled with despair and sorrow. No. He Shui Fu and his brother roared at the sky. They flapped their wings and attacked the space with sound waves, trying to blast open the cocoon. However, they were sent flying by the backlash of the laws. Blood spurted from their mouths, and their eyes were filled with anxiety and despair. How could this be? Yi Chun and Ying Long looked into the distance and roared out loud. They were extremely distressed and hateful. Ha 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 ha. This is the unparalleled majesty and deep foundation of the ruins of immortality imperial court. Kong Techu, no matter how strong you are, you're just a lowly person from a remote and desolate planet. Many members of the royal family laughed wildly. They were incomparably happy and carefree. They were at the top of the pyramid of this world, and had vested interests. However, Jiang Tian wanted to wipe out everything, which made them tremble in fear. Now that Jiang Tian was about to die, they were incomparably happy. Their greatest threat had been removed. Terrifying. Many grotto heavens, masters of aristocratic families, and important figures such as the nobles and officials were all shocked. The power of this treasure was too great. Any expert or monster could deal with it. They would forever live under the pressure of this treasure, and be shrouded in its shadow. It suppressed people with the power of heaven and earth, and refined them with thousands of great Tao as a cauldron. Who could resist it? Only loyalty and submission. At this time, the giant net had already turned into a giant cocoon, and then evolved into the shape of a cauldron. It was exactly the same as the great cauldron of myriad Tao. It was like a replica, but it was much larger and was completely condensed of great Tao and laws. This great cauldron of myriad Tao was the final way of killing. The bronze cauldron that Divine Emperor Lai Hua had used before was just a primer to activate the divine power, and activate the laws and great Tao. It was like a key. At this time, the cauldron was very condensed and tightly sealed. Jiang Tian could no longer be seen inside. Countless laws and great Tao turned into ice fire with thorns, mountains. They crazily attacked Jiang Tian. Divine Emperor Lai Hua is unparalleled. His divine power is unparalleled. His divine power can shock heaven and earth. Who in the world can stop him? The Divine Emperor is indeed a heavenly talent. He is the Emperor of all ages. He looks down on the world and his power has shaken the ages. Kong Techu is just a clown. He can't even withstand a single blow. Now that he has fallen to such a state, he deserves it. Many grotto heavens, masters of aristocratic families, and nobles of the royal family were promoting and flattering him with their divine senses. The Divine Emperor Lai Hua's eyes were arrogant. Suddenly he felt sad and 2 lines of tears flowed down his face. He said in a trembling voice, "Children, I have avenged you." But at this moment, Jiang Tian's mocking laughter suddenly came from the great cauldron of myriad Tao. Divine Emperor Lai Hua, is this your method? Everyone looked over in horror. They saw a pair of sparkling palms, which seemed to be filled with chaotic aura, suddenly piercing out of the great cauldron of myriad Tao. Then both hands grabbed the edge and gently parted. Rumble. Thousands of laws boiled and the great Tao shook. At this moment, the entire ruins of immortality was affected. It was roaring and wailing. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled for 90,000 feet. The wind and clouds surged for 100,000 miles. It was like an injured beast roaring crazily. Crack. The great cauldron of myriad Tao was torn open by Jiang Tian's hands. In this pair of hands, the incomparably tough laws and powerful great Tao were as fragile as paper. Under the horrified gaze of the divine Emperor Lai Hua, Jiang Tian put his hands behind his back and stepped out of the great cauldron of myriad Tao. He didn't use any spiritual energy, just his physical body alone. He stood in the void in a very natural manner, as if the heavens and earth had become his servants, supporting him. It was as if the myriad of Taos had become his subjects, listening to his orders. This was the majesty of the divine body of chaos. Like the Son of God, the divine Emperor Lai Hua was very strong. Whether it was his physical body, true essence, divine treasure, or deity, they were all powerful. He could control the laws of fire, as if they were his arms. This great cauldron of myriad Tao was the embodiment of the great Tao law. Even a cultivator at the peak of the soul formation realm would be easily crushed to pieces. Unfortunately, he met Jiang Tian, the Jiang Tian who had cultivated the divine body of chaos. The divine body of chaos was the body of a deity, the body of a deity, and the body of the strongest deity, the body of a creator deity. Although Jiang Tian's divine body was only at the initial level, which was equivalent to a deity's baby, it was comparable to many deity and saint bodies at the phenomenal level. The great cauldron of myriad Tao used by the divine Emperor Lai Hua could melt everything, and even kill a soul formation realm cultivator. However, it couldn't withstand a single blow from Jiang Tian. This was Jiang Tian's trump card that allowed him to look down upon the ruins of immortality. It could be said that without a divine or deity soul formation realm cultivator, ordinary soul formation realm cultivators in the ruins of immortality would not be able to kill Jiang Tian. He was like a true god, possessing an undying body, impervious to all techniques, and fearless in the face of all Taos. Even if the headmaster was here, Jiang Tian would dare to compete with him with his powerful physical body. This is impossible. The divine Emperor Lai Hua's face was full of fear and disbelief. Chapter 1604. This was a peerless Taoist treasure that could even kill a peak soul formation cultivator. It was the essence of the headmaster's 1,000-year-old Taoist fruit. Even the three magnates had to be cautious when facing this treasure. But now, it was torn apart by Jiang Tian like a piece of paper. And it was torn apart by his physical body. What was Jiang Tian's body made of? Was it the legendary saintly body and divine fetus? Not only him, but many grotto heavens and masters of aristocratic families also stared with their eyes almost popping out. If this guy wants to attack me today, I definitely won't be able to withstand 3 moves. Ban Shan was so scared that the corners of his eyes trembled crazily and his hair stood on end. His body tilted, and he almost fell from the sky. It had only been a few months since they parted in the steel forest, but Jiang Tian's strength had increased by more than 100 times. What should we do? Should we attack together? Haihezi's face also turned pale. A chill ran down his spine and rushed to the top of his head. He felt a great threat. He and Ban Shan had tried to kill Jiang Tian, and knew that with Jiang Tian's vengeful personality, once he was free, he would definitely take revenge. Run now! Divine Emperor Lai Hua was indeed a peerless divine emperor, who had shocked the ruins of immortality for thousands of years. Seeing that the situation was not good, he immediately used the walk formula to break through the void and escape. He had to kill Jiang Tian. That was right. But unnecessary sacrifices were completely unnecessary. Now even if he tried his best, he couldn't hurt Jiang Tian. In that case, it was better to avoid him and save his strength. The divine treasures of divine Emperor Lai Hua roared, and used the walk formula. Wind, fire, and thunder appeared under his feet. The vertical eye on his forehead spewed out flames and broke through the space. His whole body was like a flame of heaven, burning the road ahead and escaping to the north at lightning speed. This punch is to avenge my brothers, and to repay you for 3 months of crazy hunting and killing. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed coldly. He stepped on the void with his right foot and the void cracked. With the counterforce of the void, Jiang Tian broke through the battle formations one after another like a human-shaped cannonball. Crystal warships and nascent soul stage cultivators were immediately shattered by him. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Tian had crossed 100 miles and arrived behind the Inferno God King. This scene stunned everyone. At this moment, the Inferno Godly Emperor used the Path character art, and also used the Sun Sutra to burn open the void. His speed could at least be ranked in the top 10 of the ruins of immortality. He was the best in the universe. However, Jiang Tian had surpassed the Inferno Godly Emperor just by relying on his physical strength. This was like a fantasy story. The next moment, Jiang Tian clenched his fist and punched out. Clang. With this punch, the entire world was instantly thrown into chaos. The sun and moon hung upside down, and it was as if the world was about to collapse. No, the Inferno Godly Emperor suddenly turned around, his eyes filled with extreme fear. He let out a cry of surprise and waved his hands like he was paddling water, triggering countless great paths of heavenly fire to block in front of him like a giant flame shield. However, Jiang Tian's punch was too fast, almost at the speed of light. It had completely exceeded the Inferno Godly Emperor's reaction speed. He hadn't fully activated his laws, and he hadn't even had time to form a domain. Jiang Tian's jade-white fist shattered the void wherever it passed. The fist passed through the Inferno Godly Emperor's hands and easily broke through the half-formed laws of fire, as if they were brittle paper. The fist landed on the Inferno Godly Emperor's chest. Oof! A big hole was blasted in the Inferno Godly Emperor's chest. He spat out blood and screamed into the sky. The blood was in the state of flames, lingering in the void and burning fiercely. If one looked through it, they would find that the blood was completely composed of runes of the laws of fire. In fact, the Inferno Godly Emperor had already surpassed Vitality Life and reached the level of Law Life. He was indestructible, but he was still beaten to the point of vomiting blood by Jiang Tian. No. This emperor's might has suppressed the ancient times. How could someone with heavenly talent fall? How can I die in the hands of a nobody? The Inferno Godly Emperor yelled, unwilling to accept such a tragic reality. He activated the swordsman formula crazily to repair his body. Let's see how you're going to repair it. Jiang Tian sneered. The nascent soul in the spirit embryo roared and activated the soul devourer's immortal will, shooting it out like an arrow. Whoosh! The soul devourer's immortal will shot out like a bolt of lightning, and shot into the mind of the Inferno Godly Emperor. The soul devourer's immortal will was ferocious. It instantly smashed the divine soul of the Inferno Godly Emperor. His body immediately stiffened, and the wound showed no signs of healing. In fact, from the perspective of mortals, once the divine soul was destroyed, the person would be dead even if the body hadn't rotted. However, soul formation grand cultivators were powerful because they had a god. A nascent soul was the combination of essence, chi, and spirit. It had self-consciousness and was like a second life. It could be reborn and rebuild a body. A god was 10 times or 100 times more powerful than a nascent soul. If a nascent soul was a weak baby, a god would be a strong young man. As long as a god was immortal, he could be reborn from a drop of blood. Of course, his life wouldn't end. Roar! The god inside the body of the Inferno Godly Emperor yelled, and there was endless determination and hatred in his eyes. The next moment, the god stepped into the air, and was about to leave the divine treasure, as if he were opening a door. This god seemed to break out of his body and grew bigger with the wind. He was just like the Inferno Divine Emperor in his youth. His features were similar, but he was also a little childish. The Dharma power, divine powers, blood chi and true essence of that god were 70 to 80% of the Inferno Godly Emperor at his peak. Apparently, a god was even more terrifying than a body and a divine soul. Go to hell. Without saying a word, Jiang Tian did not show any mercy and threw out a backhand palm strike. Boom! As Jiang Tian slapped, The air in a few hundred-mile radius was turned into a thin layer, as if the three-dimensional world had become a piece of paper. The clouds, mountains, cultivators, battleships and Dharma artifacts, and even the god and body of the Inferno godly emperor, were all turned into a flat surface in an instant. No. In the end, the god spread out to 100-meter radius, almost like a thin piece of paper. The remnant soul of the god came out and yelled, trying to break free. But then, it found that the space had been locked and was still being compressed. Then the remnant soul was also broken. That was the power of the chaotic divine body. Even without using any Dharma power, it was enough to kill a normal soul formation cultivator. It was a piece of cake. At this moment, the flesh and blood of the Inferno Celestial Emperor, as well as the essence, chi, and spirit of the god, were all spread out like a red membrane. It was very thin like a red sunset, hazy and translucent like a veil. Boom. Boom. The aftermath of the slap didn't stop. Within a few hundred-mile radius, all the members of the royal family and their crystal chariots and battleships were turned into thin pieces, like little mice that had been hit by a heavy hammer. Nothing was left, and everything was turned into ashes. At the same time, in a royal temple in the ruins of immortality, a statue that was enjoying the worship of incense suddenly opened its eyes, revealing a look of horror. It wanted to roar, but it was already too late. The statue directly exploded and was annihilated inch by inch, as if it had been crushed by an invisible hand. Not a trace of it was left. Ah! How did the statue break? The guardian cultivators around him were terrified. This statue was where the Inferno godly emperor's primordial spirit rested. If the real body died, it could be reborn. But now it was broken. In the back mountain of the academy, in a huge cultivation bottle in the courtyard of Grand Chancellor Xian Hu, a young Inferno godly emperor also exploded. All kinds of organs flew in all directions, splashing red and yellow liquid on Xian Hu's face. Not only that, but in various secret places in the ruins of immortality, even in some blessed lands in the second-level and third-level worlds such as Hylon, Barbarian, Desert, and even in an unknown folded cave. Almost at the same time, dozens of statues of the Inferno godly emperor collapsed, and hundreds of his avatars all exploded and died. Jiang Tian's slap not only killed the real body of the Inferno godly emperor, but also killed all his primordial spirit, thoughts, and living things in the ruins of immortality. A godly emperor, in the true sense of the word, had fallen. This was the power of the chaotic divine body. At this moment, all the cultivators in the ruins of immortality, who had seen or sensed all of this, were shocked. From a small character like Song Baoxin to the big shot level strong practitioners like Chancellor Ban Shan, and the sect masters of the various large grotto heavens, they only felt like ants facing a true god. They were so insignificant and powerless, so weak like ants. It was as if the stars couldn't withstand a single blow from Jiang Tian. At this moment, whether they saw it with their own eyes or through the light screen, the billions of cultivators in the ruins of immortality were silent at the same time. The entire ruins of immortality was silent to the extreme. Only Jiang Tian stood proudly in the sky above the Xiantian mountain range that had almost been razed to the ground. His long robe and black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were shining, as if he were the immortal king of the 9 heavens, unshakable and invincible. Chapter 1605. Divine Emperor Inferno, who had dominated the ruins of immortality for thousands of years, was dead. None of the spectators dared believe it. Even the heroes of the great bandits were deeply shocked, unable to recover from their shock. Divine Emperor Inferno's final myriad Tao cauldron was so powerful that even a late-stage soul formation great divine lord might not be able to withstand it. However, Jiang Tian had broken through all Dharma with his physical body and suppressed all Daros with one palm, easily destroying his physical body, deity, and countless divine souls. Didn't that mean that Jiang Tian's strength had already surpassed soul formation? How is this possible? He was clearly using laws, and he has a nascent soul in his body, not a deity. That thought surfaced in many people's minds, but they found it unbelievable and incredulous. But the truth was the truth. The scene before his eyes clearly proved that all of this was real. Jiang Tian had the strength to take on veteran soul formation cultivators, or late-stage soul formation cultivators. Now perhaps only the three powerhouses, Teacher, Sword God, and Star Lord, have the ability to suppress him. Upon realizing this, many members of the royal family turned pale, as though they were grieving for their parents. It could be said that although Divine Emperor Inferno was not the strongest among the 10 Divine Emperors, he was at least in the top 3. After all, he was a direct Divine Emperor. As for the other 2 direct Divine Emperors, they were on the same order of magnitude as him. It could be said that the Ruins Emperor's palace no longer had many trump cards that could match Jiang Tian. They could only ask for help from a peerless powerhouse. Roar! Divine Emperor Inferno is no match. He can't withstand a single blow. He's no match for our celestial Varch. Fu Heishui cheered. This Lai Hua is a silly roe deer. Fu Huiran shook his head and sighed, gloating. He gave his daughter to us and became our father-in-law. Our celestial Varch is also a benevolent person. He will probably spare his life. His Majesty Grand Primordium's breakthrough has made him so powerful. That palm strike had the power to destroy the world. Green Drake King Yunzhongzi Nyo Duotian and the other great bandits exchanged looks. They were shocked and could not remain calm. Perhaps His Majesty Grand Primordium already has the qualifications to compete with the 3 powerhouses, or even the Ruins Emperor. Tu Fei's eyes sparkled as he clenched his fists in excitement. They knew that after Jiang Tian's breakthrough this time, he would definitely ascend to the limit, but they didn't think that Jiang Tian would be so powerful. He didn't use any mana or abhijna in actual combat. Instead, he used his powerful physical body to smash the Inferno Godly Emperor into pieces. The key point was that the Inferno Godly Emperor had used the Great Tao Cauldron. This was too heaven-defying. What? The Inferno Godly Emperor was actually killed? In the army of Academy disciples, Song Baoxin was completely dumbfounded. The other disciples were all shocked and terrified. Kong Teichu was very strong, but in their eyes, in front of the Inferno Shenhuang, he was like an ant, unable to withstand a single blow. Therefore, they watched this battle as if it was an outing. Their mentality was very relaxed. Who would have thought that it would end up like this? Not to mention the small fries, even Banshan, Black and White Suns and the sect masters of the Grotto Heavens were terrified. Jiang Tian's palm smashed the air and turned 3-dimensional into a flat surface. Even the Inferno Godly Emperor was killed. It was too terrifying. When I was cultivating in seclusion, you all attacked the generals of the new heavenly courts. Shouldn't we settle this score? Jiang Tian took the essence chi and dharma treasure fragments of the Inferno Godly Emperor into the sky-swallowing demonic gourd. Then he glanced at the Grand Cultivators calmly. His voice was neither warm nor angry, but it was shocking, as if it came from the vast 9 heavens. Is it really time to settle the score? Is it starting so soon? Hearing this, everyone shuddered. Their hair stood on end as chills ran down their spines from head to toe. They all knew that Jiang Tian was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Back then, before his power had increased, he had tried his best to kill the sword servant Tong Yujian. But then his power had soared and he already had the power to defeat soul formation cultivators. How could he let those people go so easily? At this moment, many people trembled and thought of running away, but they immediately denied that idea. Jiang Tian didn't even need to use Dharma power. He was faster than the Inferno Godly Emperor with his body. Who could run away from him? Now whoever ran first would be the first to stick their neck out, and would instead be killed by Jiang Tian. Of course, among them, Banshan and Black and White Suns were the most terrified. They were different from the other forces that dealt with Jiang Tian's subordinates. Those 2 had worked together with Tong Yujian to kill Jiang Tian back then. Jiang Tian said that there would be bloody revenge back then. However, I, Kong Teichu, am not a cruel person. Jiang Tian softened his tone and whispered. What I did was to take back the great rivers and mountains that belong to the deity land. I don't want to see innocent people trapped in the fire and water. As long as you're willing to surrender to me and fight against the empire of the ruins of immortality to atone for your crimes, I can spare your lives. As soon as he said that, the entire place fell silent. Everyone sank into deep thought, fighting an intense battle of thoughts. Many people were hesitant. They certainly knew that Jiang Tian was powerful, but the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality still had a lot of trump cards. In addition to the three giants, there were hundreds of thousands of cultivators, crystal warships, countless arrays and Dharma artifacts. Even if Jiang Tian had the combat power of a late-stage soul formation cultivator, such a huge army could still wear him down. Kong Teichu, don't be so arrogant. Even if you killed the Inferno Godly Emperor, you're no match for the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. One of the princes stepped out from the crowd and shouted, "Don't worry. Surrender. We can forget about the past and rule with you. This is your only chance." This prince was wearing a golden python robe and a golden crown on his head. His face was like jade, and he was very handsome. He looked elegant and graceful, and there was a hint of sharpness in his aura. Prince Qiuming. Long Xingnan's face darkened, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Prince Qiuming was one of the four princes, and one of the disciples of the Sword God. He was in charge of the 9 guards of the Emperor of the Ruins Palace. His talent was extraordinary, his cultivation was powerful, and his battle achievements were illustrious. Before in the Ruins of Immortality, he was a high and mighty figure, shining like a star in the sky. Even Cheng Aojuan, Su Chongqing, and the other heaven's favorites on the God of War list idolized him. In the past few years, he had always been the vanguard of the operations against Jiang Tian. He was even the chief commander in the early stages. He didn't give up command until the situation got out of hand. This time, he followed Divine Emperor Lai Hua to gain experience. Just now he cheered for Divine Emperor Lai Hua in the crowd and jumped very high. The royal family was different from the Grotto Heavens. The royal family was Jiang Tian's mortal enemy. Even if they surrendered, Jiang Tian would definitely not let them off. Furthermore, the souls of the princes were closely connected to the Ruins Emperor's palace. Once they betrayed him, they would immediately be killed by the marriage pursuit art. They would not have the chance to surrender. In a short period of time, Prince Qiuming had thought through many things. Instead of being killed by Jiang Tian, he might as well take a gamble and intimidate Jiang Tian. Perhaps that would give him a chance of survival. "Do you think you have the right to negotiate with me? You're just a dog." Jiang Tian laughed mockingly. Jiang Tian was not exaggerating when he said that. Even God King Hanshi was killed. Even God King Lai Hua was killed. In Jiang Tian's eyes, princes and nobles were nothing more than trash. "What did you say?" Prince Qiuming was enraged. "How dare you question me? Be prepared to be killed." Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he pointed with his finger. This time Jiang Tian used the Kunpeng Divine Rule. It was still the Nirvana Void-splitting saber, but it was more than 10 times stronger than before. Pa! A saber beam flashed across hundreds of miles, and Prince Qiuming's head exploded. Blood mist filled the air as an inch-long nascent soul flew out, only to be shredded into pieces by the surging spatial saber beam. A headless corpse fell to the ground. "Let's fight it out with that devil Kong Teichu." "Kong Teichu, you have killed the innocent and stirred up a storm of blood. You will be punished by the heavens. You will die a horrible death." The princes also knew that they would definitely die today. Therefore, they roared and charged towards Jiang Tian like moths to a flame. They burned their golden cores and even their nascent souls. Their bodies were covered in blood-red flames. They were burning their lifeblood and lifespan. They were going all out. Trash. Jiang Tian did not say another word. He attacked mercilessly with his palm. Bang, bang, bang. The space within a few dozen miles was flattened again. Many of the members of the royal family were at the nascent soul level, and some were even at the half-soul formation level. There were more than 100 of them, but they all exploded like firecrackers. They were all crushed by Jiang Tian's palm. Chapter 1606. This scene shocked everyone. It was too bloody and cruel. Under Jiang Tian's attack, many members of the royal family were turned into blood mist. Kong Teichu, he's going to fight the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. Many people realized this. The sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven trembled, and showed deep fear and shock. "Father, did you see that? His Majesty Taichu has avenged you." Only Long Shengnan was crying, but there was deep joy deep in her eyes. She looked up at the sky and sighed. It should be known that it was Prince Qiuming who had brought the 3 guards down to the lower realm to sweep through the Dragon Clan and exterminate the Dragon Clan. He could be considered the main culprit. How could Long Shengnan not be happy and excited when Prince Qiuming was killed? Jiang Tian had certainly risked universal condemnation by killing Divine Emperor Hanshi and Divine Emperor Lai Hua, but after all, it was a life-and-death battle. It would make sense if the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality wanted to issue an edict. However, Jiang Tian was completely a god of death at this time. He didn't leave any room for negotiation. Even if the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality thought that they should rope in Jiang Tian, they wouldn't do it anymore. Because Jiang Tian's attitude was to fight to the death. He was invincible and showed no mercy. Besides, the sect masters of the Grotto Heavens, the lords of the families and the kings also knew that Jiang Tian's action was also a declaration. He had even slaughtered the royal family of the Ruins of Immortality, so what was the difference between the other forces? If they didn't surrender, he would really kill them. My friends, what can we do? The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven had white hair and a white beard. He was extremely depressed and said with his immortal will, Kong Teichu is very powerful. He didn't use any Dharma laws or divine powers from the beginning to the end. He killed Divine Emperor Hanshi with only his physical strength. I'm afraid that we might not be able to resist such a terrifying power even if we work together. He was already 8,000 years old. He had experienced the war between the South Gate and the cultivators of the deity ground during the Age of Tao Damage. His seniority was even higher than that of the Inferno Divine Emperor. Although he was not a member of the royal family, his cultivation was as deep as the ocean. He was about the same level as the Inferno Godly Emperor, and his combat experience was very rich. Is his body invincible? The dozens of soul formation cultivators frowned. In fact, Jiang Tian defeating the Inferno Godly Emperor was shocking, but it was nothing. The Inferno Divine Emperor was certainly more powerful than them. But since they were all soul formation grand cultivators, he was only slightly more powerful. However, Jiang Tian's punch that blew up the Inferno Divine Emperor made everyone's hair stand on end. In the entire Ruins of Immortality, there was probably no second person who could kill the Inferno Divine Emperor so easily. Even if everyone present were to join hands, it would still be difficult for them to do so. The strength of this body might be unmatched in the immortal ruins. Even Ban Shan couldn't help but admit this. His heart was heavy. The next one will be the 2 of us. Black and White looked at Ban Shan meaningfully with a deep gaze. In fact, all the soul formation grand cultivators had realized this. They were extremely nervous and their minds were in turmoil. Small fries like Song Baoxin and Cheng Aojuan might still have a chance to take advantage of the chaos and escape. However, the sect masters of these grotto heavens were being stared at by Jiang Tian, so they had to make a statement. Besides, Jiang Tian wouldn't give them too much time. Their lives were in the hands of Jiang Tian. Besiege him from a distance, trap him with secret treasures, block him with arrays, and attack him with supreme Tao artifacts or crystal warships. No matter how strong his body is, he's not invincible. The sect master of the flower-washing cave heaven said softly, but his eyes were as cold as ice, flashing with endless killing intent. If they surrendered to Jiang Tian, the dynasty of the Ruins of Immortality would definitely not let them go. There would be a bloody purge and the chances of them dying were very high. Besides, even if they could escape, what about their descendants? Many of them had signed a soul contract with the dynasty of the Ruins of Immortality. They would have nowhere to run, and their divine souls would be destroyed. Of course, the chances of winning against Jiang Tian were slim, but at least there was a chance of survival, especially for their descendants. We don't have any other choice. The sect master of the Tianmong Grotto Heaven looked at Zhao Shanhe and said with a hint of sorrow. Since the day he embarked on the path of cultivation, he knew that it would be a path filled with bloodshed. Cultivators were strong and had a long lifespan, but killing people for treasures and fighting for cultivation was like licking blood on the edge of a blade. They usually didn't end well. However, he also knew that the higher the level, the lower the probability of dying in a fight. For example, only 1 or 2 soul formation grand cultivators had died in a fierce battle in the Ruins of Immortality in 1,000 years. Therefore, he didn't expect that he would still have to face a life-and-death choice one day. Even though he had already reached the peak of the soul formation realm and stood at the top of this world. More importantly, his son, Zhao Shanhe, might also die with him. Zhao Shanhe was his favorite disciple. Fortunately, he had a long lifespan and many cultivation partners and children, so he had left behind a lot of bloodlines. Father, I understand. Zhao Shanhe's heart was pounding and his body was cold. He trembled slightly. This was an unprecedented sense of crisis. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that when he entered the Qi refinement realm at the age of 10, his father threw him into the barbaric mountains in order to refine him. When he faced a black tiger, he seemed to be torn to pieces at any time. Let's fight. Many sect masters of the Grotto Heavens heard the news and took action. The happiest ones were Ban Shan and Black White. After all, it was dangerous for the two of them to deal with Jiang Tian alone. The chances of winning were extremely slim. But now more than 10 soul formation realm cultivators were taking action together, so their chances of winning suddenly soared. Kong Teichu, today let's fight again. I will wring your head off. Ban Shan had a tall stature, and the muscles all over his body were like coiling dragons. He wielded a huge hammer, and his dusty face was filled with killing intent and ruthlessness. Under the admiring gazes of Song Baoxin, Cheng Aojuan and the other disciples, Ban Shan stepped out of the flying ship and approached Jiang Tian. Kong Teichu, you've killed many people and you've caused a lot of bloodshed. You're the top fiend in the ruins of deity, and everyone has the right to kill you. Today, I'll uphold justice and kill the fiend. The black and white chess pieces' auras were indistinct, and their green robes were worn out. They grabbed the chessboard and leaped out, their battle intent rising steadily. Other than Sun Xiao and Divine Lord Xian Nu, the sect masters, Grand Elders and a few Divine Lord families of the other 5 Grotto Heavens spread out and stood 100 miles away from each other. There were 18 of them, all of whom were soul formation realm cultivators. They either emanated ghastly sword qi, flickered with black light, raging flames that shot into the sky, or were lofty and majestic like a mountain. But every single one of them possessed extraordinary bearings, and possessed divine might that emanated peerless pressure. They were brimming with the aura of a superior figure as they stood towering in space. They looked around and faced Jiang Tian. Although they were nervous and cautious, their battle intent was surging. That kind of aura was definitely not a bluff. You couldn't fake it even if you wanted to. That was a battle record that could only be released with the confidence of a powerful divine ability. It could be said that apart from the 3 giants and a few divine emperors, they were the masters of this world, as high and mighty as gods. In the past, they dominated a region, and no one was willing to submit to anyone. But now they were working together to kill Jiang Tian. It could be said that they were creating a new world. It could also be said that no matter what the result of this battle was, that day's battle was enough to be recorded in history. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.